or not? But yeah, because I said it after. After talking about the day, yeah, just think something will be available. So it's like, yeah, it's on that. It's that May, that third.
Okay, everybody quiet.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we don't have the agenda.
Justin? Pat? Ready? Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful April 24th. What a beautiful day it is out in the town of Stony Plain. Before I call the meeting to order, I just want to thank Councillor Anderson for chairing the Governance and Priorities meeting on April 3rd, and Deputy Mayor Hassler for chairing the April 11th meeting, the RCM. So thank you very much for taking those opportunities to chair the meetings, so allowed me to take some time away with my family. So thank you. With that, members of council, there is a agenda before you. We're just going to slightly amend that. So after number 4, the new number 5 would be a motion to go in closed session. And then from there, all the other numbers will kind of change, so there'll be one after the next. Yeah. Administration, anything else to add to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Town Council adopt the April 24, 2023 regular council meeting agenda as amended.
Thank you. Members of council, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving on to number 3 is the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk to the council or bring concerns about anything that's not on the current agenda. Is there anybody in the chambers like to address council that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none. Administration, has anybody registered to speak at public input session?
Through worship, no, there has not been.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda, number 4 is the presentations and delegations. Today we have our auditor joining us for the 2022 financial results. Welcome, Mr. Dirks. Again, if I can just ask you to speak directly into the mic so members of council and those in the gallery can hear you.
Right. This on? Okay. I don't have a booming voice, so it sounds like it's coming through. But good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And good evening, members of council, administration. My name is Phil Dirks, and I'm a partner with Metrics Group Chartered Professional Accountants, and I'm happy to be here to say a few words about the town's financial statements for 2022 and the audit. So I'll try to keep this fairly brief, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We'll just get right out of here. Just to provide a quick summary, the audit went very well. The accounts are well looked after. Town's still in good financial position. And I just want to say special thanks to Terry, Riley, and anybody else in finance or any other department that helped us get our work done so that we could report back to you tonight. So overall, good news. Just a quick word about the auditor's report. You should have that in your package. Didn't reproduce the whole thing here. But the auditor's report is basically the culmination of our work. So we've attached the auditor's report to the town's financial statements. The report that's in your draft financial statements is not a report that our firm makes up. It's prescribed by CPA Canada. Is that better? Is that better? Hello? Okay. Anyways, so that report is prescribed by CPA Canada. If you look back to last year, it'd be very, well, the only thing that would have changed is the dates, but we refer to it as a standard report. And at the top of the report, you see an opinion paragraph up here. That's probably the most important thing to council. And in that paragraph, we are stating that the town's financial statements are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So those are the standards that school boards, hospitals, local governments, and related entities follow in completing their financial reporting. So overall, clean opinion. The rest of the report, I'll just paraphrase, goes on to talk about a little more detail what an audit is and what the auditors do. So, we did send you an audit plan earlier in the year, which describes or discusses some of those issues, so I won't refer back to that, but by all means, happy to answer any questions if you have questions about any of that. So I'm just going to move on. A couple of highlights on the financial statements. So looking at the statement of financial position, a couple of comments here. Okay, I'm glad I brought my computer because my notes are on here. Anyways, okay, so top of the page here, looking at financial assets. So the town has various financial assets. Financial assets are things that are either cash or very close to cash. So you can see there was $15 million of cash in the accounts and some investments. So between those two, that's the lion's share of those amounts. Those standard procedure in those areas is to confirm those with the financial institutions. The only comment I would say there is at the end of the year, these investments are carried at cost or book value. And at the end of the year, market value was, about $1.5 million less than the book value at that point. So, we fully expect that to recover, but those are carried at cost. So just keep that in mind. Receivables is always a key area in any audit. So there was $6.7 million of receivables that the town had on its books at the end of the year. So from the audit standpoint, auditor's real concern is collectability. Are these going to come to fruition? Pretty standard items for a municipality, taxes, utilities, GST, grants, those types of things. So we didn't see anything in there that led us to believe that there was going to be a problem collecting those funds. So that's really the key issue for us. So overall, total financial assets were $45 million at the end of the year. Oh, I should maybe just mention, I shaved 3 digits off the I shaved 3 digits off the numbers you're seeing in the financial statements. If you're wondering what happened here, it's not an auditing mistake. It's just easier to look at. So. The numbers are getting kind of long, actually. So, as far as liabilities, the town had just over $50 million of liabilities at the end of the year. Standard items for a municipality. You can see here there's accounts payables, $8.2 million, various deposits, primarily things that the town has collected for developments and so on. Deferred revenue is a big number here, $8.5 million. So the town had received, actually deferred revenue, just to back up a second there, deferred revenue is money that the town has received that's stipulated for various purposes. It's primarily grants and developer levies. So the money that's left over here, deferred revenue, is going to be used in a future period. It hasn't been applied to any projects. So the biggest amounts in there are MSI Capital, $2.5 million. And some developer levies of about $2.3 million. So that will become revenue in a future period. Again, standard items for a municipality. The town's largest liability is long-term debt here, $31 million. And if you looked in the notes, you'd see that's all debentures with the province of Alberta. Rates anywhere from about 2.3 to 4.6, and at this rate, that would be paid off by 2041. So the mayor will be 37 by then, I believe, if I'm correct.
A little bit older than that.
Anyways. So rounding out the statement of financial position here, the net debt on the statement of financial position, we have financial assets, less liabilities. The difference between those two items is what is referred to as net debt. So the $5 million there at the bottom really represents funds that are going to have to come from future operations, future revenue sources. And you don't need to be alarmed that it's a negative amount here. It does include these debentures, right? And those do not need to be paid back tomorrow. So it's pretty common to see a net debt number. Debt limits are required to be disclosed in the financial statements as required by the Municipal Government Act. So you can see at the top of the page here, town had a debt limit available of $37 million if you wanted to use it. Basically, calculation is debt limit, $68 million, which is 1.5 times the town's revenue from operations. Less the debt. So main point of that slide is you're well within the town's debt limits at the end of the year. Non-financial assets. Biggest asset on any municipal financial statement is tangible capital assets. So that was almost $250 million at the end of December. So we'll take just a quick look at what was included in there. So this year the town had about $14 million of additions. So these are things, roads, various infrastructure, machinery, equipment, those types of things, buildings. But you can see here the more significant additions during the year that occurred, and then some of the funding sources here on the right that were covered by grants. So this is the total capital grants over here that were used during the year. So the only issue that really comes up in that area sometimes is, what is the definition of an asset? So sometimes we like to argue about those things, give us a little bit of interest into the audit, but overall things that were in capital assets this year we did not have a problem with. So, but that's what can happen. So again, total non-financial assets were $250 million. We had a net debt here of $5 million. The total of those two is accumulated surplus of $245 million at the end of the year. And that's just comprised of various categories here. The largest amount of the equity is, similar to many of our home finances. We have equity in our house. That's the same thing here with municipalities, roads, bridges, sewer, water. Those things are all equity, have equity in them. So that's the net book value of those assets less the debt. And then beyond that, the town has various operating and capital reserves. So those are, designated by council through motions and budgets and those good things. So you had about almost $15 million there at the end of the year, or approximately $15 million at the end of the year. So still in good financial shape, prudent to have money set aside for future projects and those types of things. Just taking a quick look at operating results for the year. So we can see here, this is operating revenue. Total operating revenue was $46 million. The budget was $42.6. A couple things, if you've been through one of these presentations before, you know what I'm going to tell you next. There's usually, if you remember, the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Center gets consolidated into the town's books. So we're going to see a variance here under sales and user charges. Town's budget doesn't include those results. So there was about $1.5 million, I believe, was the, just going to get my bearings here. Yeah, $1.5 million in sales and user charges related to the Tri. So that pretty much explains the difference there between actual and budget. A couple other things to note there. Government transfers, you can see a little bit of a variance there as well. On top of the Tri, the town also consolidates the library. So the library got some grants. And again, that was not included in there, so that's primarily the difference there. And one other thing to note here of significance, down at the bottom, we're seeing this year with interest rates rising, you can see that the town did better than was anticipated on investment income, both compared to last year and this year. So culmination of all those things basically led to operating revenue being about $3 million more than the budget. So those three things pretty much summarize that. Looking at expenses, we're going to see a very similar kind of theme here. Starting at the top of the page, recreation and culture. Again, there was about $2 million included in that line item related to the leisure center. So that more or less explains the budget overage in that line. Utilities, just a couple things to note here. There was a little bit more in the budget actual, in the way of the regional water charge, about $475,000. So that's the reason for the overage in that area. And what else did I want to tell you here? Oh, power, a little bit over in roads there. That's primarily one of the biggest areas where the town has power charges. So we all know what was happening with power costs last year. So that was about $190,000 touch. And protective services, the RCMP costs were about $300,000 more than what was planned. So those are the reasons for the differences there. But the rest of the line items are very close to budget. So again, we looked at the revenue. We were about $3.1 million ahead of budget. In expenses, we were about 3.2, so very similar to the revenue overage as well. So and actually, then when we take the difference between the two here at the top of the next page, revenues less expenses, 3.8 million. Budget was 3.7, so you actually came in very close to your what you had budgeted for operating results. The other thing to note here is it says it's a deficit, and it is a deficit for accounting purposes. But the town did bring enough money to cover its expenses. You'd have to adjust that number for amortization. Beyond that, there's other expenses and revenue down here at the bottom. I mentioned capital grants, 4.8 million. Typically every year also the town receives some assets, infrastructure assets from various developers. So just a reminder, when the town receives those get recorded at fair value of those items and recorded as revenue and an asset. So overall, bottom of the page here, we had annual surplus of 3.5 million. And at the bottom here, again, if we start from the top and go to the bottom, add back amortization, the town would have had $3.9 million more in revenue than it had in expenses, which again was very close to the $3.7 million in the budget there. So overall, good results. Town's still in good shape. As far as the audit findings report, you also should have a copy of that document. Just kind of say a few brief words on that. So we didn't find some of the key items, we didn't find any significant control deficiencies when we were doing our work. No unusual accounting policies, procedures, those types of things. Standard policies for municipality. The only major estimate is amortization. So why do we care about estimates? Sometimes, clients can use those to skew results because they do require judgment. Thankfully, in the municipal world, there's not too much excitement in that area. No significant uncorrected misstatements that we noted during the audit, and we did not have any difficulties during the audit. So again, thanks to the finance team and all the town staff for all their help in assisting us getting our work done. So overall, that was a summary. I hope I get the point across that things went well and the town's still in good shape. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have at this point.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. And it's always good to hear those words that the town is in good financial shape. Members of council, any questions, comments for clarity and understanding? Okay. Seeing none. Turn to page 15 of the report. Just a quick question. I think you mentioned the investment income. For me, when I look at numbers, I always look at the percentage change from the previous year and how that relates to what I just heard. So you said that increase was due to the rising rate of interest rates.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't hear what you said for a page number. So yeah, if we were looking at investment income, is that what you were referring to? Yes. So yeah, that's primarily due to the rates increasing during the year. And like I said, we're seeing that with pretty much all our clients that have some money on the books.
Okay, so that increase is roughly 225% from what we budgeted. So in terms of 2022, the town made $349,000 more in interest received for investments than we would have projected.
Yeah, and again, I think the 2022 budget was, conservatively based on the 2021 actuals. I don't think anybody saw those interest rates increases, at least to that magnitude coming, so that would explain that.
Okay, and then maybe just to you and to administration, that's a huge increase. So in terms of utilizing the interest rates, is it possible, I'm not too sure if staff did, maximize those returns for 2023 into like a longer term GICs or terms, whatever we do through our fiscal policy?
Yeah, I could let Terry answer that, but I guess what we've been seeing is some of the short-term rates were not much better than any long-term rates, but Terry, you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you and to all of council. One other factor with the interest rates, so first to answer your question is we do work very closely with our investor to maximize those rates, and we do lock in based on cash flow projections, if that makes sense at the time, so they help provide advice through that. The second piece that Mr. Dirks didn't mention was we had a sizable debenture that we pulled last year that was not expended, and it was invested because that project was delayed. It was delayed again in 2022. And so, sorry, the debenture was pulled in 2021, and we invested it because the project was delayed, and it was delayed again in 2022. And so we have a significantly higher investment dollar currently that was not planned for, because that was planned to be expended in 2022. And so we've seen quite substantial gains that are offsetting the debenture that we're already paying back for that project that is still underway.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. That's very good for me as a taxpayer to hear and for a member of council as we continue to budget going forward. Members Members of council, any more questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm looking at the actual financial statements themselves, not the presentation. Sorry, I'm just going to get right back to the page that I was at. So it is right here. It'll be page 118 of our council package. Mr. Dirks, this is just a question in regards to how the reporting of the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Centre comes into the town's financial statements. So you mentioned, and I'm just looking again for clarity, you're on the revenue side, under our sales and user charges, we saw the additional, so we were budgeted at $15.3 million. We saw just over $17 million as the actual on revenue. But then on the expenses side as well, am I clear in understanding that we also see the expenses from the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Centre rolled into there? So in 2022, our actual expenses in rec and culture is showing at $12.2 million. We're budgeted at 9.9. Is that variance based on the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Centre?
Yeah, that's correct. Basically, the way the consolidation works is the town picks up on a line-by-line item, more or less, the revenues and expenses and the assets and the liabilities. But, you know, it all fits under recreation.
Okay, and then further on to that, we have various notes on the financial statements for things like our golf course and that kind of stuff. Is there a reason why we don't have a note on the financial statements about the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Centre when those numbers aren't factored into the regular annual budget?
There would be a note at the back with the Leisure Center's financial information and stating how it's been accounted for in the town's books. There's also an accounting policy note in the accounting policies, note 1, top of the page there. I don't have it right in front of me here, but yeah, that describes the approach that's taken. Basically, the town picks up its share of all these things, which I believe was about 26%.
Okay, so the concern I have is in those pages that I referenced, it does not show the note. So in other categories, it will say, you know, see note 3 or any of that. On those pages, it doesn't show. So when you're looking at the financial reports, it looks like a significant variance on the revenues to the positives, on the expenses to the negatives. And even if it is mentioned somewhere else in there, it's not showing that. Or on everything else it does. I'm just not understanding.
Sorry,
why
I
that
don't
is.
have it with me right here, but maybe I can catch up with Terry and we can address any concern there was there. Would that be all right? I'm not quite sure. Like, I know there's a note in there that lays out the leisure centers at the back, close to the end, that lays out the leisure center's results and assets and liabilities, and mentions that the town consolidates its share of those numbers. Sorry, I just don't have the note right off the top of my head.
I can just add some context there. On page 137, note 17, so it does talk about the consolidation. It talks about, so it's also on the statement of operations as well, so it goes through financial assets, liabilities, non-financial assets, and then revenue and expenses, and what line items are hit there. And so it does hit multiple line items, so you are correct that there isn't a reference to note 17 on each line there, but it does outline what was consolidated and what the dollars were.
We could certainly add a reference on, for instance, like the sales and user charge revenue that references that note, if that's what you'd like to see.
And I think I look at this, I compare this to the golf course. So our golf course, even though it's split out in the notes and we do see the specifics around it, our golf course is actually included in our budgeted numbers. Whereas the Tri-Leisure Centre is not included in the budgeted numbers, so it automatically throws that variance in there, which is why I picked up on it the way that it picked up on it. So maybe the inclusion of the note, or I don't know if it would be a better practice if we actually were including the Tri-Leisure in the budget. Like, we know it's a separate one, but we understand we will always have that cost, we will always have that revenue and that expense. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't appear in the actual budget itself, and why they would just be rolled in at the financial statements, and then rolled in the financial statements with, yes, the note 17, but no reference to the note 17 in those line items.
Yeah, well, I guess we could add the references. As far as the budget goes, I'd have to look into the accounting standards on that. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if you're supposed to actually include the other entities' budgets with your budget in your financial statements, but we could look into that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hansford, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, based on Councilor Laurie's questions, I'm hoping that all of his questions would apply to Stony Plain's share of the TLC. Does any of that, any of the information he's seeking, involve our auditor having to go into the books and records of the TLC? Because they have their own auditor who reports to them. And I'm just wondering if we've got overlap happening here. It seems like that wouldn't really be appropriate. And I'll ask that, and then I have one other question.
Thanks, Councillor Hansard. No, there's no overlap. Myers Norris Penny, I believe, audits the TransAlta Leisure Center. And, basically the auditing standards allow us to rely on their work. And then we just consolidate the town's shares into these numbers here. We're not doing any extra audit work.
Okay, thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, through you, I'm thinking that all of these questions about the TLC would be somewhat numbers in flux, because each year would be considered in and on its own, because if the revenues are high this year, they are high. So the amount of money needed by the TLC would maybe come in less as the dollars come forward to be reported to the town. So all we can really do is look at our town records of monies received and monies expensed on behalf of the TLC and its operation as one of the 3 partners in a Part 9 company. Is my question clear?
Well,
We've got a room full of taxpayers sitting here tonight. I don't want them to be confused about what we're talking about. When Councillor Lori's asking specifics about the TLC, we're one partner of a Part 9 company that has 3 partners.
and if you look back over the years, and I think Councillor Laurie probably had a good comment there, that maybe what we need to look at is if we're allowed to include the TransAlta Tri-Leader Center budget in your books, that might resolve the budget variances. I mean, there's always been a budget variance. The only thing is, it would be only your share of the budget, right? Not the total. So really, that's the only issue here that we're talking about, is like, you don't budget for that, but we record it in the actual line items, so that's why there's a difference. And if
Okay.
you-
And then for further clarification on that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So just for clarity for members of council, is that the numbers that are reflected in terms of user fees and expenses for the Tri-Leisure Center represents our 24.5%. 26.1%. So it's
Correct.
not the 100%.
No, for sure not. That's just the town's share.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Deputy Mayor?
and I'm not sure if Mr. Dirks will have the answer, or Mr. Mayor, you would, or our CAO, or General Manager Hill. I'm just wondering if, when we're talking about including TLC in our town budget and compare the golf course to that, well, the town of Stony Plain owns the golf course. We don't own the full meal deal at the TLC. So would that be an explanation as to why we don't have it just flat out in our budget on the TLC like we do on the golf course?
Well, that has been the explanation, but I mean, if people feel like it might be more appropriate to include part of that budget, we could look into that. But so far, that hasn't been the case.
Okay.
And just so you know, it's the joint control, it's a separate entity. That's where the issue comes in, right? So it's not the town's budget per se. So that's why there becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I was just, for clarification, I'm looking at page 133 of the, and it's number 8, tangible capital assets. And it has, usually those go up, generally speaking. But our water systems one seems to have gone down by a few tens of thousands of dollars. But looking on page 13 of your report, I see we do have the North Business Park lift station for 1.4 million. But going back again to page 133, the amortization for the year being 438. So I'm just curious how, if we've added that, why overall the,
Yeah, apologize, I don't have that page with me, but it is possible that, you know, a category could drop due to the amortization being greater than the additions.
that's what I'm saying, is if we count the North Business Park lift station increase for 1.4, on page 133, it lists it, current amortization 496,000. So like, it would still.
That's for water or sewer, or which one was that?
It says water systems.
Okay, Terry, do you have that in front of you?
Yes, through your worship, to Councillor Meyer and all of council. So part of that would be the amortization rules that we need to follow as per PSAB. So the first year that depending on when that comes into our possession, it does not get amortized the first year. It's called the first year rule, and it'll start in the subsequent year. So you'll see that amortization going up in that year. So the water assets did go up on that page. It's just the amortization that I think your question is, that the amortization should have gone up because we have more assets.
No, my question is, that's what it says, is that the amortization for the water systems is 438. Under tangible capital assets, it says the book value was 19,560,000 last year, and this year it's 19,486,000, so it went down, right?
That sounds like it went down. Yeah, I'll probably have to look at that and then get back to you.
Okay.
Sorry, I just don't have the full thing.
Now, I'm sure it's probably the way I'm reading it.
Well, not the way you just described it. I'll take a look and then we'll get back to Terry. So it's on the water line?
Water systems.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you. If you can follow up, please, on the email for that clarification. I think kind of getting lost on the page numbers and stuff, just to get some clarity. Okay. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Okay. See, now I'm going to ask members of council to turn to page 123. Just a quick question regarding the transfers for capital from the provincial government. I think in 2022, we budgeted 6.1 million. The actual was 4.4 million, which is a deficit of 1.6 million. And the 2021 actuals was 7.3 million. Can administration or the auditor provide kind of the difference in terms of the dollars and cents? From last year, it's about a $2.8 million decrease from the provincial government, and then from the projected budget is actually a 1.6%, $1.6 million decrease from the provincial government.
Terry?
Absolutely. Thank you, through your worship, to you and all of council. So the transfers from government, the total government transfers are recognized as we utilize the money. So it sits into deferred revenue. So if you look back at page 117, you'll see that our deferred revenue has actually gone up. So that means we're holding some of those grants or transfers from government for projects that are not completed yet. And so that will show up in the government transfer schedule on page 123 once those are recognized.
Okay, thank you. And then note 6 on that same deferred revenue. So the increase in what we're holding is about $700,000. The decrease in the actual on page 123 is 1.6. So what is the change? So if we're holding back, if we're short $1.6 million, then should we not be holding back $1.6 million?
I can address that. So on the deferred revenue, the reason that went up slightly was basically because the town received the Canada Community Building Fund money of 1.1 million, which you did not spend. I think you're using that on a stormwater pond. So that's going to be delayed to 2023. And some of the items that go through the revenues in the revenue line there, government transfers for operating, not everything goes through the deferred revenue accounts. There's some that go directly into the revenue accounts. So you can't just look at the change in the deferred revenue and go, why isn't that the revenue?
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Page 124, members of council. Just seeking some explanation on the increase in the revenue for parks and recreation. We understand that comes in from the TLC. However, this is a line item that is 30% more than 2021. So in 2021, it was 1.37 million, and in 2022 was 1.71. So when I look at books, I said it's always percentage based to me, and a 30% increase warrants me to ask the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have the page numbers there, so Terry, can you answer that?
Through you, your worship, to you and all of council, Schedule 4, the Parks and Recreation would have the tri-leisure mainly, that piece in there, so all of their recreational fees. So this is sales and user charges, so anyone that goes to the tri-leisure for any activity is paying through there, and all of theirs would flow through there. And you can see our budget was only $222,000 for that. So we don't have the details of why the TLC has increased their revenue so much. I would attribute that probably likely to COVID turning around.
Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate if the TLC representative on the board bring that forward just to double check to see the increases. I know that TLC passed their own budget, so that would have been considerably more than what their budget was. Okay. Any other questions for clear understanding to the auditor? Okay. Seeing none, that ends the presentations. Thank you very much, Mr. Dirks, for having that presentation coming forward. It's always good to see your face in chambers as you present some of the boringest and driest stuff that we ever hear, but it's very, very informative and necessary that we need to know on members of council. I just ask you to stay there. Members of council, we added number 5 to the agenda, which was to move into closed session. In terms of good governance, it is good to go in closed session with the auditor to allow the auditor to speak frankly with members of council. The MGA, Section 197, allows council to go into closed session, which allows us as part of the Freedom of Information Act. During that time, there's no motions made in closed session, and there's no notes taken of it because it is a closed session to protect the information of the individuals in there. And today's closed session for this part will be just members of council and the auditor itself. After that, we'll have a motion to move out of closed session. That's the only motion that's allowed and made. And then from there, then the public is welcome back in. So with that, I need a motion to go in closed session. Councillor Meyer.
Yes, your worship, the town council move into closed session per FOIP Section 25 to discuss town of Stony Plain 2022 audited financial statements auditor presentation.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. And if we take a 5-minute recess to have everybody clear the chambers except for the auditor and town council. Please and thank you. Okay. So members of council, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to council meeting. We've just come out of our in-camera session with the auditor. The motion was made by Councillor Anderson to come out of closed session, and that was carried 7-0. Administration, has anybody asked to be notified when council came out of session so they can come back to join us?
Through your worship, no, there have not.
Okay, thank you. Since nobody else has been notified, we'll continue on with the agenda. Moving on to number 6 is statutory public hearings. We have nothing scheduled for tonight. So we'll move on to number 7, which is the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes for April 11th.
Would you give us the page number, please, Mr. Mayor?
Whatever page number that is. If you look,
In the format I'm using, it doesn't give a page number.
page 23.
Thank you.
So members of council, you had an opportunity to read the minutes from April 11th. Any errors or omissions? See none. Okay. Councilor Laurie for the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council approve the April 11th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on the motion to accept? Okay. See none, just the question before I call the question. To administration, I noticed on April 11th, I was not here. Originally, I thanked Deputy Mayor Hansen for chairing the meeting. However, I'll be signing off on these minutes, even though I was not present for the April 11th meeting. Can somebody provide some information on that? Because when you read this out of context, and somebody's reading the April 11th minutes, it states that I'm not there, but yet I sign off on the meeting minutes.
Through your worship and to council. So the person that signs the minutes is the person who approves the minutes. So the minutes are being approved at today's meeting, which you are chairing. So you will be signing off because you are chairing the meeting where the minutes were approved.
Okay, so with that, that's a good explanation, but there's no word that states when these minutes were approved. To clarify things going forward to the future and even through our other boards and commissions, there's a lot of questions on why was X person was not there, but somebody else signed for it, but we don't know when the actual date of those minutes were approved. Is that a possibility to add those to the minutes saying it was approved on April 24th?
Your Worship, just generally speaking, the motion that is passed for the approval would be tracked and dated and so on and so forth. And I think, Your Worship, at this point in time, we can take that under advisement and see if there's something different we could or could not be doing, as opposed to just, I simply don't want to sit here and agree. We'd want to take the time to understand the request and just make sure we're doing it in a proper manner. So.
Right. Thank you, I appreciate that. And again, just for the ease of our residents and other people that do look at our agendas and minutes, the April 24th minutes will show that I was here, that I approved it, but the April 11th do not. So there's a little bit of misconception there of who's signing what. If we can review that through the MGA and see the best way forward. Okay, move on to number 8 is. Oh, sorry, Councilor Laurie, you made the motion, but I didn't call the question. So all those in favor as the minutes presented? Okay, and that's carried. Moving on to number 8 is the Council Boards and Committee minutes. Cultural Roundtable, 7.1, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council receive the January 18, 2023 Cultural Roundtable meeting minutes for information.
Okay, thank you. Members of Council, you had opportunity to read it. Any questions for the Council representative, which was Deputy Mayor Hansard, but now is Councilor Loynes? Any questions? I have a question to the representative. It looks like there was a resignation on the board. Again, in terms of the board policies, is the board looking for another member to fit that role?
Yes, they are currently looking for a member to fit that role. There has been some discussions into regards to the bylaws in order to fill positions, as it has been a struggle.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? So that'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried 7. Thank you. Moving on to number 9 of the agenda, it is bylaw. So looking at 8.1 is the bylaw 2672 for tax 23. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. Agenda item 8.1 is bylaw 2672, tax 23, property tax bylaw, with the recommendation from administration of all 3 readings. So we are bringing this forward as an amendment to the bylaw that was distributed in your council package last week. The vacant residential and vacant non-residential now reflect the rate at 1.25 times the general municipal rate plus the protective services amount. This is now consistent with policy CFS 047, which is the taxation of vacant lands enacted January 1st, 23. What is important is you understand is it did not change the total revenue It was just a redistribution between the general and protective municipal amount and the new vacant subclasses. So the total municipal revenue still sits at $20,100,969. So with this, I will ask our Manager of Financial Services to move forward with the rest of this report. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. The exercise of setting annual property tax rate authorizes Council to impose a tax mill rate in respect to collecting taxation revenue to cover the expenditures of the town set out in the approved corporate plan. This evening, we are asking Council to consider all 3 readings of this bylaw. Tax notices will be prepared and distributed by May 20th following the approval of the bylaw. In November 2022, Council passed the 2023 corporate plan, which required 7.47% increase to the tax requisition amount, equating to $1.3 million. This year, there were no adjustments noted subsequent to the corporate planning process, therefore a spring budget was not required. This means the original taxation requisition amount of $20,969 as presented and approved in November will continue. 2023 taxation year is the 3rd of 4th year in transitioning the tax rate split to the average of the 8 urban Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board members, less Edmonton. As such, a tax rate split of 1.32 has been proposed. The taxation charts presented include the recommended option for continuing on the path at tax rate split of 1.32, as well demonstrates 2 alternate options in the allocation of the tax rate split, which include maintaining the current split at 1.26 or fast tracking to the average at 1.39. Each property, whether residential or non-residential, are impacted differently by market inflation. On average, the town's total combined residential assessment base realized an inflation of 7.36%, which was reflected as fair market values. Non-residential properties had a similar overall average of 7.43%. Individual assessment notices were distributed in February to all property owners, showing the 2022 assessment value of their properties that will be used for calculating the 2023 taxes. Due to growth and the tax rate split change, residential properties will see a decrease in their mill rate. For simplicity, a $100,000 assessment value was used to demonstrate the impact of these factors. The new mill rate would need to be multiplied by the assessment on the assessment notice in order to calculate an individual increase or decrease per property. This would be based on their individual inflationary factor. Non-residential properties will see an increase in their tax rate due to the tax split transfer from residential offset by growth realized in this classification. The bylaw this year includes the vacant land mill rate for the first year as per the taxation of vacant lands policy and bylaw. This is calculated at 1.25% of the total municipal and protective services rate and is reflected as such in the bylaw. Also included is the requisition amount for the Alberta School Foundation and Meridian Housing Foundation. These requisition amounts are defined by those parties' annual budgets and allocated to each municipality using the 2022 equalized assessment. They are collected by the town of Stony Plain and remitted accordingly. Alberta's provincial school requisition was frozen at 2022 levels, but the overall growth in the province assessment has reduced the amount the town's payable portion, which also reduced the mill rate. Meridian Housing Foundation requisition for the operating of Whispering Waters Manor increased by 5% for the town of Stony Plain. Demonstrated in the charts, the Tri-Leisure Facility debenture term expired in 2022, which shows a reduction in the municipal tax rate area. Administration recommends council approve the bylaw as presented. This concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you for the rest of the presentation and bringing that forward from their kind of a budget planning, corporate planning back in November. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation to our administration. Just for clarity, again, it's a matter of finance that can sometimes be a little bit daunting. But there's a really good line in here for clarity. I'm just looking at, it says the demonstration means $100,000 of assessment in 2022, last calendar year, would have paid $30.10 more than 100,000 of assessment in 2023. So essentially, 100,000 equal across the 2 years. We're actually seeing a reduction in the residential taxation rate of approximately $30 per 100,000. However, given the economic situation, we saw a little over 7% of inflation. So the reality is that as that balances out, there is going to be a change in a taxation that a resident will see, but it's very hard to predict because it's based on the assessed value of their home.
Thank you, through your worship. That is correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Hansard? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Not so much if it's clarity or understanding, but on page, 42 of 167, under the fourth whereas, there is reference made there to Meridian Foundation. That organization has officially changed their name to Meridian Housing Foundation. And I would just wonder if it's possible, please, to have administration look through this piece of our package, maybe all, and make sure we get the name of that organization correct for the record, because this is the permanent record of what people can go to in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Administration?
I believe there's other examples, but that's one that I know.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hansard, through the chair. That is something we will make sure that if we need to do the amendment, we'll certainly can reflect that, the accuracy, and we will verify that that indeed is the correct name as well. Thank you for your question.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing that forward. So on page 35, as we talk about requisitions, it does say Meridian Housing Foundation, MHF. So if we can kind of mirror those two together. Okay. And then just with other notes there, I think our staff budgeted a 1% growth increase, and there was a 1.35% growth increase, so a little bit more than what we projected. So in terms of the actual tax increase or the mill rate increase, in November, Council passed 7.47. So what is the number now if this bylaw goes through?
Thank you, through your worship. To you and all of council, that would reduce the approved tax rate by 0.35. I just have to do some quick math. So it'd be 7.47 minus 0.35. .12%.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you letting me ask this question for my own understanding, as well as that of perhaps of people live streaming into our meeting and those in council chambers. I know this year we received a grant, and I'm not recalling what it exactly was for, in the neighborhood of $400,000+. When we receive a grant, even if it's something that it comes after the fact, and the project was already put underway or maybe even finished in the previous year, would those dollars apply to the current tax rate in order to lower that? Or what happens to those dollars? When we get a grant like early this year, it doesn't reduce our tax for 2022, does it? Or will it be applied for the next tax year?
Okay. So Councilor Hansford, from my recollection, we just had a couple meetings ago in terms of we deal with the surplus at the end of the year. So that accounts for things that were underspent, extra grants that came in that we did not account for. And usually then, based on our policies of all surpluses, 1/3 goes to the tax stabilization levy, which is used to do one-off projects that we don't need to add that to our overall tax base. So that's projects for construction or just, if we wanted to do a study on something, it'll come out of that instead of having it added to the tax base. The rest of the dollars are then earmarked by council to certain projects that reduce the overall requests from our residents on different other projects. So it's just not like happened today, it's going tomorrow. It's like it happened, we did the year end, we take it and we earmark where it's going, so this rate stays the same, and then in the following years, it comes back out.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming on page 36 of 167, that is a picture of what the bill will look like going out to our residents. And in that box with the beautiful blue lines, it once again says Meridian Foundation. Would we be limited in this instance from using the term Meridian Housing Foundation because of the number of digits allowed on that line? I know there's a limit to how many lines you can have on this mock-up of the requisition, but I'm just bringing it up in the event that that's one of those. And I'm not presuming or thinking that anybody's going to think I went back through this whole document and found every little place where the word housing was not inserted into Meridian Housing, Meridian Foundation name. I'm just bringing that up because that's a separate kind of a document that now is going to go out to all of our residents. And I think it's much easier when taxpayers understand that that's seniors housing, a facility or set of facilities that they may very well need sometime in the future. It's just helpful when it's really clear for our residents and taxpayers.
Thanks for the comments, Deputy Mayor. And again, that's before the tax bills go out. That's an easy fix or correction by administration. It's just typing it in, and if there's not enough characters, then it always just goes, and you just lose those couple characters at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following off of your question, you had asked administration, you'd stated that when we went through corporate plan, council had approved a tax requisition increase of 7.47%. And then furthermore, just based on growth, the town of Stony Plain had seen a 1.35% tax increase on growth, where we had predicted in the budget a 1%. So you'd mentioned that the difference was actually a 7.12%. But again, further from there, I just want clarity from administration to make sure I am understanding this 100% correctly, so when we're discussing it with residents, we can actually give a true number. After we include growth, we're at the 7.12%, but then further in the report, it speaks to our assessment coming in at an inflation growth of 7.36%, which I am presuming is 7.36% above what was presented in the corporate plan budget. Therefore, as we go through it, we approved 7.47%. We had growth of 0.35%. We had inflation of 7.36%. And therefore, our actual tax requisition, instead of an increase of 7.47%, would be a decrease of 0.24% overall, after you include inflation, growth, and the assessment. Is that correct?
Administration?
Am I understanding that correctly?
Go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship, to all of council. The best way to reference that is to go back to the amount of tax additional that we're requisitioning. So the percentage increase in budget was 7.47. I'll just use that number for now. That amount equates to 1.3 million additional tax revenue required. How that is distributed is based on the mill rate. So those two aren't apples to apples. They're actually two separate things. So when council approved the 7.47%, that's based on how much tax revenue additional tax revenue is required for the next year. So the growth did impact the reduction on residential for sure, as well as the tax rate split, as well as the vacant land portion as well. So all of those factors impact that, which is why it's not easy to do a simple chart to say this is how much. The easiest way to depict it is to say 100,000 last year would have paid $30 more than they will this year.
Excellent, thank you. And yeah, and so going back to that, and so apples to apples, the 100,000 to 100,000 is the best explanation, and currently that 100,000 to 100,000 is actually showing a decrease from last year. Excellent, thank you.
Any more questions for clear understanding? Okay. See none. Councillor Loynes for first reading, please.
Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2672, tax 23, a bylaw to authorize the rates of the taxation to be levied against property within the town of Stony Plain for the 2023 taxation year.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, you had the presentation, you had the opportunity to read the agenda package. Questions, comments, and debate on the motion to accept. Okay. Seeing none, I guess I'll throw a question out there to members of council. As council is aware, we passed the new mill rates as a residential and non-residential split. So our goal is to reach 1.39%. Right, so with this motion, we're increasing it to 1.32. However, there's three options that was provided by administration. One is to leave it at 1.26, which is referenced on page 39 of our chart. So if we leave it, then we are at the medium rate of the residential property taxes. If we increase it to 1.32 as our plan, we're still at the medium of our taxes to our neighbors. If we increase that ratio to 1.39, we're still at the medium. Right? So which means we're still, in terms of residential taxes, we're right there. So in terms of providing services for residents. However, on page 40, when we look at the increase to the non-residential business, last year we're at 1.26, which made us the second lowest non-residential tax rate in the region. If we go with the plan to increase to 1.32, that makes us the fourth lowest. Actually, no, it actually makes us the third lowest, behind Leduc County and Parkland County. If council wants to increase it to 1.39 this year instead of wait for next year, that makes us the fourth lowest non-residential tax rate. So behind Leduc County, Parkland County, and Morinville. So my question to the members of council is this an opportunity for us to level the playing field a little bit with the non-residential tax base to accelerate our plan to increase that rate to 1.39 this year instead of next? And that is referenced on a couple of the pages before. So if you look at page 37, so 36 shows you what 1.26 is, which we currently had last year. Increasing that split to 1.32 is what we're looking at today. But increasing to 1.39 is accelerating our split by 1 year, which then keeps us in the medium range of the residential taxes in the metro area. But then it also bumps us a little bit. So we're still on the bottom third of the non-residential rate. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions pop into my head when you propose that. One, what does it mean for our residential taxpayer? Does that mean they're going to pay a little bit less than even we've discussed here this evening? Or is the advantage to adding it to the non-residential tax base to raise that back to what we thought and putting us number 4 lowest instead of number 2 lowest, what does that do to hurt us in our continued driven effort to deliver more residential and commercial tax producing businesses to the town of Stony Plain, which will do an ongoing effort, a bigger favor to our residential taxpayers by continuing to keep their taxes lower because the residential and commercial base is paying a higher rate. So to try to summarize, because I even can confuse myself with all these numbers flying around. If we claim second lowest taxes for non-residential, we can sort of brag about that in our efforts to bring more business to Stony, which may help our taxpayer on the residential side. However, if we raise it for our business taxes, if we raise the business tax, we run the risk of creating dissatisfaction in that community, which does in its own way pay the lion's share of our taxes. Residential taxes do not pay for all the services that our residents, including me, including all of council, doesn't pay for those services. We have to have the business and industrial sector in order to be able to afford to run the town of Stony Plain to the standard that we have. I'm just a little bit torn as to why we would bump it up for the very producers who are going to serve us on a silver platter an ongoing lower tax rate for our residences. Help me to understand that, please.
Okay, I'm a little confused. If council looks at page 34, so that is the current rate, what we're looking at doing right now. So on the residential rate for 2023, a property value of $100,000 this year versus $100,000 last year, there's a savings of overall $30.10 at 1.32%. If we accelerate that rate to 1.39, as shown on page 37, then $100,000 last year and $100,000 this year, the residential taxpayer saves $37.56. So there's a decrease to the residential taxpayer. And I would argue the fact that the commercial, the non-residential tax base does not pay the lion's share of the taxes. Right now, with the town of Stony Plain, 83% of our tax revenue is from residential taxes, not non-residential taxes.
That's a good argument, Mr. Mayor.
So, Councillor Blatchko, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think what we're trying to get at here is, you know, at some point in time, and we've talked about this, I think, since I first got on council, about making taxes within our community equitable for our residents and our businesses, comparable to what all other municipalities do. And when I first got on council here, what I seen was that our taxpayers, our local residents, paid substantially more for taxes than our local businesses did. And all we're trying to do is put them on an equal playing field within the region so that our residential taxes are comparable to the surrounding municipalities, and our local business taxes are comparable to the surrounding. By moving it up, we are still well within the medium of our residential taxes, which I think is more than fair, and getting us more to an equitable situation. And we're moving us into a situation where our businesses are paying their fair share of what is here. I can speak as a business owner within the community. I like the idea that our taxes are somewhat less, but I also can think about being the chamber president for years and wanting the town to get things more equitable so that the residents and the businesses were more fair within the community. So I think here's a really good opportunity today. You know, listening to what one councillor has said, I think I'd like to hear a bit more from the rest of the council as to what they're thinking as well. But here's a really good chance, without impacting taxes drastically within our community, to be able to move things to a more equitable situation for both our local businesses and our local residents, giving them a better tax rate.
Thank you, Councillor Pletchko. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Meyer?
Yes, thank you. Just to add to the discussion, you know, like I think back to our original discussion on this a number of years ago in regards to, and sort of along Councillor Hansard's line, easing it in and giving businesses, you know, time to adjust and whatnot. And so I'm inclined to not support accelerating the change. I think we're going to do it. We have it planned to do it. I was comfortable when we agreed to do it in a phased approach, and I think that opinion still holds for me. I'd also just add that just on these charts in regards to our positioning in relation to the other communities, it does make a note that we don't have the other communities' 2023 mill rates. So in terms of where we may be positioned, we might be kind of flying blind there. Not necessarily, well, maybe that's an overstatement. But in terms of where we're positioned, we don't necessarily know that.
Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll echo the position with Councillor Meyer there. You know, when we put this in, we put it in as a phased approach. We put it in as a phased approach for a reason. Part of that was that as we move forward, the growth would actually help deflect some of that change to the businesses. And so when I look at the three options that were presented, the option that's been recommended is the 1.32%. That's actually an increase on the municipal requisition on the non-residential of $29.14 per 100,000. So because of the non-municipal requisitions on there, being the School Foundation, the Meridian Foundation, the 1.32 does still result in an overall reduction. However, again, it's because the non-municipal offsets the increase to the municipal rate. If we take and we were to accelerate this to the 1.39%, we actually, or the 1.39 split, we actually would increase the municipal taxes per $100,000 assessment to $56.28. So it's a pretty significant increase on the businesses. It's almost double what we're, it's almost double what we're proposing today in the 1.32 split. And then again, because of the, excuse me, the non-municipal, it does deflect that a little bit, but they still show an increase of $10.70 per 100,000. I think what we've proposed in the 1.36 or 1.32 is a good balance. It is showing an increase on the municipal taxes, but due to the non-municipal requisitions, it does still show a decrease per $100,000 assessment for our businesses, which I think is something to be very palatable by them. And then it also gives us another year worth of growth in our industrial commercial sector, our non-residential sector, which again, when we move this to 1.39 on the tax rate split, could lessen the impact, because the higher our assessment goes, you know, we just had a fantastic announcement not that long ago about a significant new business coming into the commercial industrial sector here in Stony Plain. So as that comes in, that's going to help reduce the actual overall impact of the businesses there. I think back when this was approved, it was a good model. Looking at the charts we see in comparison to other regional municipalities, I think it still shows a good model. It still shows on both the residential mill rate and the non-residential mill rate. Stony Plain is one of the least expensive places in the entire metro region for both residential and non-residential taxes. And I think we struck a good balance, and I'd be supportive of keeping on with the plan we have in place.
Okay, Councillor Lawrence, you had your hand up? Go ahead.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Your Worship. Opposite to what my fellow councillors have said in regards to keeping it the 1.32, I am inclined to agree with Councillor Pletchko that what it does to help our residents is huge. And I understand most of our residents are our local business owners as well. But through all this process and understanding that in waiting to go up that little bit. It might just be easier to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, get there, and allow people to realize the potential growth. Yes, we have a huge company coming to our North Business Park that is going to help us substantially, but that's relying on one business coming in. Potentially, we could have more businesses still with any type of growth, because like it has been mentioned, we are relatively inexpensive to live in. And I think it's important to keep going with that, that's it.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Well, one last comment on that then. I'll have to speak to actual value of the properties. When we're talking the difference between $30 and change and $50 and change, if we choose to go up in that rate for the businesses, industrial and commercial, we have to remember that our residential rate is going to be $30, $34, whatever it is, for every $100,000 worth of assessment. Not very many properties in Stony Plain are $100,000. A few, maybe a handful or so, might be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. That would be 5 times that $30 or whatever. But when you get into our North Business Park, and many businesses in the Old Town sector and some of the newer areas in Stony Plain, we're not talking $500,000 value. We're talking $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. Now you're going to charge them, if you go up, $50 and change for every $100,000 an extra dollar value, and that can add up. That's when your businesses start coming to counselors and trying to tell you, we're just digging out from COVID. We're still in a recovery. Yes, things are picking up, but they're not rosy. So I think we need to maybe stick with the plan we had and not seize the moment to jump ahead and raise the dollar on the corporate and industrial. Let's stick with the plan. That's my viewpoint.
Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate the discussion at the table this evening. There's a couple of things that stand out for me, and one, Councillor Loyens mentioned, you know, a lot of our residents are business owners, and to borrow a phrase from Councillor Plechko, you know, we have one taxpayer, and you know, it's going to affect every taxpayer differently, but you know, the reality is for so many of our businesses, it's either going to come through their residential or it's going to come through, you know, their business tax. One thing I want to make note, and I think administration has spoken to this a couple of times, it was alluded to during our audit presentation earlier this evening, but council has taken steps in previous years and this year to try and reduce the burden of the tax increase on the resident. And a couple of those things are this tax split that we're talking about that is changing the last couple of years and into next year, the plan, what we're talking about accelerating. But we've also looked at or approved a vacant land tax, which increased the tax assessment on vacant lands that were sitting there to 1.25% as well. And then with the assessment growth. And so all of these things are working to bring down, as best we can, the residential tax rate. You know, I would be inclined, you know, to suggest that based on what we have presented to the community with this staggered increase to the non-residential side, that we stick to that plan. I think there's wisdom in, you know, allowing not just residents but business owners to prepare for those changing rates as well. We're not talking about years and years, we're talking about following a staggered path that gets us to the same point next year anyway. And so with consideration given to you know, some of those other things that were mentioned that we're using to bring down the residential tax rate, I would be inclined to support the motion as presented and keep the 1.32 to 1 tax split for this year.
Any other questions, comments, and debate on the motion? That's a great conversation, and that's why we have council meetings every day. Okay, with that, I think Councillor Loyens had the motion for first reading, so it is to give first reading to tax bylaw 2672, tax 23. Any more comments? Call the question, all in favor?
That's for what we have before us, not the proposal to raise it. Is that correct?
This is the motion that's on the table right now. Okay, I'll call the question again, all in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Do I need a motion for the second reading? Councillor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2672, tax 23.
Okay. Any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? See none, call the question, all in favor? Okay, and that is carried. It's carried, is that nothing? Okay, and moving on, before we go to third reading, for those that are joining us through YouTube and that are in gallery, if the council deals with a bylaw in all three readings in one sitting, there has to be unanimous consent of council. So I'll take that motion. Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council give unanimous consent to consider third reading of bylaw 2672, tax 23.
Okay, call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. 7. And then Councillor Anderson for third reading, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Town Council give third reading to bylaw 2672, tax /23.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, and debate on it? Okay, before I call the question, thank you, administration, for bringing this forward. Again, it's been a lot of hard work, as it is every year when we deal with the corporate plan. It starts with strategic planning for council back in January, and it accumulates to when the council approves the proposed budget in November of last year, and now we're finalizing everything. So I'm really glad to see that the plans that we've laid in place are coming to fruition and building a really good community for us. Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving on to 8.2 is bylaw 2673 LUO/23. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Tonight, administration has 2 land use items for council's consideration. The town's development supervisor has prepared presentations for both these items, and the town's—
Can you move the mic like directly in front of you?
Oh, pardon me, Your Worship.
That's better. Thank you.
Yeah.
Speak directly into the mic.
The town's development supervisor has prepared presentations for these items, and the town's manager of planning and development is also here to answer questions tonight. I'll now turn it over to the town's development supervisor for their presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Newstead. Good evening, Your Worship, Council. As mentioned, this is item 8.2 in your agenda package. First reading for bylaw 2673 LUO 23, land use bylaw amendment for Sun Meadows Lot 3. So we like to use this slide to kind of set the table for what we're discussing. So this is an amendment to the land use bylaw, which governs the use of private land as well as development regulations for that land. So as part of the application for this amendment, the applicant circulated a letter to nearby property owners. They included a proposal summary as well as some conceptual images. They provided an invitation to an online survey and summarized their findings, and this has been provided in the agenda package for you tonight. Just for some context, you can see the site highlighted there in red hatching. To the north is Highway 16A, Veterans Boulevard to the east, and 44 Avenue to the west. Adjacent to the west as well is the Sun Meadows cul-de-sac, which is primarily single detached homes. So this site is within the South Business Park Area Structure Plan. It is designated as high-density residential area within that plan. This amendment would keep, within the direction of the plan to continue to provide high-density residential development for the area. And so specifically, what we're looking at is this lot number 3, would be removed from a restriction in their height, which is currently at 11.5. They would just revert to the standard height restriction of the R8 zone, which is 25 meters. And so tentatively, given council's blessing, this would move for a public hearing on June 12th, which is tentatively scheduled, and then second and third reading, and ultimately a council decision. And we'd welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Members of council, questions for clarity and understanding. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick-ish questions on this one this evening. When we look at the land use bylaw for this district, this particular project and all 3 lots are the only ones that have an exception when it comes to a height limit, and have been trying to figure out this last few days why that restriction was in place in the first place. And so I'm just wondering if we can have some comments on why there was a height restriction when these lots were first approved.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, this dates about almost 10 years ago now. At that point in time, the high-density district was being proposed for this area, south of this area, as well as to the west. There are manufactured homes, so the consideration that council had at that time was they wanted to put a limitation to ensure that it wasn't too high to be appropriate for the surrounding uses. Therefore, it was put at 11.5 meters. At the time, there was a 14-meter height restriction in the high density, as opposed to the 10 meters that was allowed in the areas surrounding that. So the council at the time, I believe, felt that the 11.5 was reasonable, given 10 for the area surrounding that. Again, at this point in time, given the fact that the one large area had been subdivided into 3 smaller ones, and this one here does not directly apply to some of those other areas that we had the concern at the time for, this one's deemed reasonable for this one lot being kind of right adjacent to the arterial road. Thank you.
Just a couple more quick points. Thank you. I appreciate the history there on that in particular. Just for clarity and my own understanding, did a quick Google search to say how many stories tall could a 25-meter height limit be, and found everything from 5 to 9 in that range. So just wondering, can you give us just kind of a ballpark about how many stories this particular height restriction of 25 meters would allow?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Anderson. Good question. It does depend on the desired ceiling heights and building materials. Typically, for our R8 districts, we've seen around 6 stories is typically what's achieved. And, in our discussions with the applicant, that's likely what would take place.
Okay, thank you for that. And just maybe some quick examples of other buildings that we have in town that may be approximately that same height.
Sure. Again, thank you for the question. Through your worship to Councillor Anderson. The library might be a good example, the 3 Robbins Center there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of council for clarity and understanding? Councillor Hansard, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, that I'm understanding what administration's reply to Councillor Anderson was. 3 Robbins is an example of what?
Of the height that a building that was built here in this red hash might look like, or the height value.
And the main floor of that building has 12-foot ceilings, I believe?
Yeah, I think so.
Of 3 Robbins?
Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. I've seen this plot of land come up a couple of times since I've been on council. And now I can't remember if it was, or originally zoned more dense and we wound up getting the townhouses, or if it was less dense and the townhouses were an increase in density. I'm just curious if this goes to a public hearing, if maybe we can have a bit of a history provided on the zoning history of this location?
Through your worship to Councillor Myers, we will provide a history of the subdivision history and the zoning for this area.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if you could repeat that. I didn't hear a word you said.
My apologies. Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, I was just indicating that we will provide a history on the subdivision as well as the districting for this area at the public hearing.
Thank you.
If approved by council.
Any other questions for clarity, understanding? Okay. See none. Question to administration. A few years ago, the intro apartments were built. Can administration provide a height for that, please? The intro?
To your worship, at this time, we're not precisely sure what that height would be. However, we can get back to council with that information after this meeting.
Okay. And also, if administration is bringing that back forward, if they can also look at Sunrise International, that they built up the Sunrise apartment buildings there. Sunrise Vistas?
We'll include that.
Okay. And also Station 33, A and B, since they're in the area. I'd like to know the height restrictions or the heights of those buildings as well.
We'll include those as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding from members of council? Okay. See none, we'll move on to motion there. So we'll go Councilor Hansard.
I do have, will all of the traffic, through you, Mr. Mayor, to admin, will all of the traffic go through Sun Meadows itself?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, right now there's a comprehensive site plan over that area that currently indicates that there would be some connectivity between the three lots as shown. However, access directly to that area is set to be directed south onto 44th Avenue directly at this time.
At the bus stop? Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, the darker shade there would be a direct access onto 44th Avenue across from the road right-of-way that's shown to the south there.
That's very close to,
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's very close to Veterans Way. Would we be allowing that with some kind of a variance, or would that be acceptable? I realize Jutland Ridge has an entryway there, entrance and exit, but I'm just wondering if that's always part of the plan, that there could be a road or an entrance immediately north of that east entry exit of Jutland Ridge.
I may need some clarification on the question after I present this answer through your worship to Councillor Hansard. In essence, right now, just for, I guess, full understanding, there's three separate, trying to get the adjust here. There's three separate accesses to the area that is highlighted in a thick black line on the map. One is to the west, which is, or indicated in red on the map here. One is to the south, a little bit further to the east. Keep going, keep going. Right about there is where the second access is going to be. And again, the third one is scheduled to be where the dark, the shade right there. Those are the three access points for this comprehensive site plan that has been approved generally for this area. In terms of where any additional accesses could be, we would have to look at the engineering that would be provided to show if the access has any constraints. But at this time, there has been a rough approval for the one shown on red on the map right now.
So in no way, Mr. Mayor, will there be an entrance exit off of Veterans Boulevard, correct?
Right now, from what I understand, the answer is no. But that's also not, that conversation at this point in time is about the zoning of the lot. When we come forward to the actual public hearing, I would have some concerns about not having a right in, right off of Veterans Boulevard to take the stress off 44th, especially for people that live there. I would not support a left-hand turn onto Veterans Boulevard, but 100% would support a right in into that subdivision.
Okay. So when we're talking zoning, am I out of order if I say I would hope all of that traffic will not be going through Sun Meadows proper, those single, individual, bungalow-style homes?
So I think the manager answered that. So the first part, or the first hashtag, phase 1, the access is from Sun Meadows. So Councilor answered this. So this part has that access to here. There's an additional access here that accesses this lot, and there will be another access that matches this one.
Okay.
Right. So I think I agree with you. We do not want to see a left-hand turn onto Veterans Boulevard because it's main arterial, but a right-hand turn in, very similar to what over there, there's a right in where it allows the traffic to flow in without having that, trying to make that left-hand turn.
And that traffic on the darkest rectangle would not be directed through Sun Meadows' original phasing?
It would not be driven through here.
Yeah.
And not here.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Councilor Pletchko.
Your Worship, I'm looking at page 68 of 167 of our package. When I look at Lot 3, which is the outside lot, I would echo everybody's concerns, but I also see there's the right turn that goes into the A&W and that parking stall right there. There's already an existence there. I'm wondering if there's some way of tying that in there. I think the overall concern here is you've got a main artery coming into town off a main highway, and the highest, tallest building that will be in our town that is now blocking view as well. So I think a lot of that would be a consideration when it comes to council to see how that affects the traffic flow along that area and to be able to get people home in an adequate time without the distraction of, I don't know how many units are going to put in there, but I suspect a number of them with the size of that lot there. So I think that's some of the things that we may be looking for is some traffic flow impacts and stuff like that. So,
thanks for your comments. Any other questions, comments to administration? See none. Move on to first reading. Councilor Pletchko.
yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2673, LUO 23, to amend Land Use Bylaw 2671, LUO 23, and authorize administration to proceed with newspaper advertising and notification of a public hearing to be held on June 12, 2023 for bylaw 2673, LUO 23.
Thank you for the motion. Members of Council, open the questions for debate and comments on the motion. Councilor Lowry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general comment in light of what we've heard. Again, there is a lot of different considerations for access. I'm just wondering if administration can advise the applicant if they have any information in regarding traffic patterns and flows and accesses, if that would be available to bring to the presentation for the public hearing. I think that would obviously be something we would greatly benefit from. As well, Councillor Pletchko had mentioned the road currently serving the commercial units off Veterans Boulevard on the corner of Highway 68. I'm not sure and would be looking for some clarity maybe in that presentation if that's a public road or if that's a private road that belongs to the commercial development, and whether access from that road would actually be able to be obtained by the town, or whether that would have to be some type of agreement between the private development and this applicant.
Your Worship, through the Councillor Lowry, thank you for the question. with respect to your immediate question about information, we can absolutely advise the applicant to bring some information forward. We could have that dialogue with them, absolutely. I did just want to make a general comment about the transportation flows through here. These are certainly very important observations brought by council tonight on the site's access, and it is something that we are cognitively aware when we're evaluating these development proposals. As many have noted, there's a number of different accesses onto 44th, and as your worship noted, different accesses may be proposed later on as we go through the process. At this stage, when we get to the engineering review stage, that's when we really flesh these things out. I just would like to make that general comment that when we work with applicants, when we work with developers, we're working with them within guidelines of Transportation Association of Canada, best engineering principles, and cognizant of traffic flow patterns and existing traffic volumes that may be on existing roads, so that we're not creating an undue burden on residents that are already in the area.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments, and debate on the motion for first reading and to go to public hearing? Councillor Hansard?
I don't think this is actually debate on this matter, but is it appropriate to ask that, should this pass first reading and come back, would administration be able to provide us with how many parking stalls are going to be required, how many 3-bedroom, how many 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom units, which sets in motion the demand for the parking? Will any parking be underground, or will it all be surface? And where will all of that parking be accommodated? That kind of information, of course, is going to be very important, not just to the people that live in the building, but to all the residents around. And it's got to be taken into consideration.
Right.
Your worship, thanks for the question through to Councillor Hansard. And certainly as council, commentary and question through first reading is important to gather some of the sense and some of the things that we can maybe try to dig into a little further going into the public hearings and as indicated, with the applicant. I do believe it's important to understand this is a zoning application. It's not a development permit application. And although there are certain things that we will be privy to, or that the developer or business owner, so to speak, can provide, it's not at the detail of a building permit application. So some of those answers just simply won't be available at this point in time. We do our level best, or we have some of those conversations as we can, but I just want to make sure there's not an expectation that we or the developer won't be able to, or frankly are required to deliver at this point in time. So.
Okay. And just before we go to Councillor Loynes, if members of council turn us to page 56 of our agenda package, it does stipulate the R8 high-density residential district. So I think Councillor Hansard, you asked those questions there, and it does say that 8 dwelling units per hectare and 1 additional dwelling unit for every 2 parking stalls, etc. That tells you how many units you're allowed in terms of row houses, the height, also in terms of lot coverage. So even when we look at that in terms of being such a large lot, it is still only allowed to have 50% coverage. So again, the entire lot is not built and developed that. The fact that it is already zoned R8, it already has all these restrictions. The only thing that they're asking for is that council 10 years ago put a height restriction on that. So again, when we do the public hearing, the questions and everything, the focus should be on relaxing that height restriction, yes or no. And if we want to relax it, is to how high do you want to go? That's why I asked the questions of both Intro, Sunrise Apartments, and also Station 33 in terms of the area there. If it's going to be extremely higher than that, well, then there's different conversations to have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've already stated you're going to Councillor Loynes. I do have one comment, if she doesn't make my wonderful comment.
Councillor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. You answered some of the things I was about to point out, but in regards to why we're here to discuss the height restrictions, it was mentioned 10 years ago we put that limit in place due to the area and what was going on around it. I am very much in favor of keeping it at that height. I understand we're just trying to get through by reading one, but knowing the area, all of the concerns we've already mentioned. It's zoned for what it is already zoned for, and they don't need to come back to us to have any changes. They're strictly just asking for a change in height. And stating the fact that we have concerns internally for parking and things like this, it makes me really question wanting to change the height zone. So those are my 2 cents in this matter altogether. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hansard, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of passing first reading unless something is really obnoxious. And the reason for that is we just had a discussion a little earlier this evening over growth being one of the things that helps keep all of our taxes lower. The other thing is those of us who already live in Stoney know what a wonderful community it is, and we can't keep it to ourselves. When we pass first reading, it's to allow the public and the developer and anyone else to have a say. Members of council, administration, anybody in the public that wants to speak to it. And we don't get to hear those comments if we don't pass first reading. So always I will want the people to have their say and not be trying to preempt that by saying I don't want to vote for first reading. So for that reason, unless the wisdom of council or something that's magically said by administration here and my colleagues on council works on my mind, I will be voting to support this first reading.
Okay, any more questions, comments in the debate? Okay, members of council, I'll be supporting the motion for first reading and to go to public hearing. As many of you have been with me for quite a few years now, I will always support first reading and public hearing because that allows us as members of council to ask these questions of the owners of a lot and also to hear from our residents. So I will call the question. Hopefully all council supports it. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Moving on, our agenda is 8.3, and again, this is bylaw 2674, LUO/23. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as mentioned, this is item 8.3 in your agenda package, a first reading for bylaw 2674, LUO/23. So forgive some repetition here. Again, we are talking about an amendment to the land use bylaw, which governs the use of land, and as well, it also governs development regulations for that land. So in preparation for their application, this applicant circulated a letter to nearby property owners. It included a summary of the proposal, as well as some conceptual plans. They provided an invitation to an online event, held that event, and provided a summary report which is attached to the agenda, which synthesized some of the comments that were received. So for some aerial context, you can see 48th Street to the west. Directly adjacent to the south is 55 Avenue. 47th Street is adjacent to the east. So this site in particular is within the Old Town Community Plan, which is the area redevelopment plan for this area. This lot in particular is within the mature residential character area. This character area within the area redevelopment plan supports infill development as well as different housing typologies and diversity in the housing stock. And specifically what we're talking about is redistricting this parcel from R1 to R7. The R7 zone was created intentionally for potential applications such as this, to provide infill development and densification, and to provide a variety in the housing stock in some of our mature areas. And we're seeing an application brought forward today. So the next steps would be, given council's blessing on first reading, this would move to a public hearing on June 12th, which is tentatively scheduled. Second and third reading would follow, and ultimately a council decision on the application. And we'd welcome any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Councilor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just similar to our last agenda item, this is a land use amendment. So again, not a building, we're not going to have details about exactly what type of building or what that would look like at this meeting. I'm just curious, unlike the other item, which is a little bit more, I think, what they call, what's the word? Greenland or, there's nothing on it currently.
Brownfield development.
Sorry?
Well, brownfield, greenfield.
Greenfield, yes, okay, okay, so in terms of, you know, this proposal isn't like that. It's not, this is like a one lot type of thing. Certainly, it strikes me that the landowner would have something in mind to present. And I'm just trying to recall in our agenda, it briefly mentions something about a fiveplex. And I'm just curious to know if that's what's proposed here, and if it is, why wouldn't we have more details?
Administration?
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer. As part of the application, requirements for redistricting, you know, site plans and floor plans are not required. I would also caution that, you know, even if the applicant were to provide some conceptual information, what you're really deciding on is whether or not the district is appropriate. There's no obligation on the applicant to you know, build exactly what their conceptual plans show now, or we're talking about a redistricting to R7. Furthermore, perhaps the property changes hands in the future and someone else chooses to develop something different, but still within the R7. So, you know, I would just caution that anything that could be built in the R7 is potential. And although at public hearing, the applicant may choose to share some conceptual details, we have no guarantees that that is what would be built exactly.
Thank you. Anything else to follow up, Councilor Meyer? Okay. Councilor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Out of everything in our package today, and this surprised me, this is the one that gave me the most pause and took the most thought and wrestling with, and that surprised me because usually it's the finance side that takes me the longest to get through, but this was a tough one for me, and I'm just on page 83 of our package. I'm not sure if that's something we want to throw up there, but it was the Schedule A for this particular area, and so yeah, there we are. Thank you. So with the exception of some commercial there along 48th Street, pretty much exclusively R1. And if we jump back to our land use bylaw, R1 is the large lot detached dwelling residential district. And so, you know, everything kind of in this 4-block radius are those single detached homes. And so when I look at the possibility of something R8, multi-unit dwelling, I have a hard time seeing that in this particular spot. And if we went a block directly north, I think it's shown, oh, let me just jump here, back to another image, page 80, which is kind of the satellite view there. You know, there's an empty lot on, just cut off there, so just north of 54th Avenue. That's in an area where we have some commercial development and some larger buildings and that sort of thing. And so certainly in terms of areas of a community where a multi-unit dwelling would fit, you know, I wonder if there are other areas that this type of project would fit into what our current area, or this current area looks like. And so, as it sits, this is one, like I said, that I, you know, to council, I'm really struggling with. And, you know, I can certainly appreciate the importance of providing an opportunity by passing first reading for the community to speak to these sorts of bylaw changes. But when I look out today, we certainly see a large number of people who are present today, and just by their presence, I think, speaks volumes about this particular proposal that's before us today. I think a number of us on council have taken calls and emails and those sorts of things as well. You know, at the end of the day, we want to see growth in our community. We want to provide diverse options for residents in our community, whether that's single-family detached, multi-unit, or otherwise. And I think as council, that's something that we've talked at length about this evening. To borrow from Councillor Hansard, lots of borrowing tonight, but unless the wisdom of council would convince me otherwise, I'm having a very hard time moving this proposal forward.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Loyens, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. I'd like to echo Councillor Anderson's statements. Even if you go a half a block down, there's 2 R4 properties there, which even then would make more sense than an R7, in my opinion. I understand what Your Worship has said and Councillor Hansard said about getting through the first reading and allowing people to speak. But as Councillor Anderson alluded to, our chambers are quite full of people, which speaks volumes. The phone calls, the emails, the conversations I've had speak volumes about the concerns for this type of development in this area. So again, I would really struggle to vote this through to even allow for the conversation to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and appreciating the comments of the colleagues before me. I think part of the challenge that we have here and why we're facing it, there was a comparison just onto the land use bylaw amendment that we had just talked about. The land use bylaw we just talked about was in a new area of development, an area that is not developed, and I'll reference what is referred to in our lead sheet. This entire area has an actual redevelopment plan that was put in place in 2019 for it. It's the Old Town Community Plan. And that was put in place specifically recognizing that this is an area of town that is likely to go through a significant change in the coming years. Whether that's 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is to be determined. This, I think, is going to be the first of many of these type of applications that will come through. And that's why we have this process. I think the first reading on this is incredibly important to pass through so that we can move to the public hearing, so that we can hear from the developer, so that we can hear for the protected use, so that we can hear from the residents in the area and how they feel that they'll be impacted by the development and understand all the facets of it before making any decision. To not allow this to go through first reading, I think, would be a complete disservice to the actual redevelopment plan that is in place and the municipal development plan that is in place for the town of Stony Plain on a whole, as those plans are guiding documents as to how we are supposed to move forward with that to meet the goals of things like our Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board and so on. So again, I'm not saying one way or another that when this actually comes to the decision point that I'm going to be in favor or not of it. I think there's a lot of information that we don't know at this point in time. We have first reading in front of us today so that it becomes more public knowledge. Obviously, we have a great public information already, which I will give kudos to the developer on this. This is a lot more engagement than a lot of developers do when it comes to redevelopment plans. A lot of them wait until after first reading is even passed to even float an idea out to the community. What I hope to see when we have the presentation from the developer is that the feedback that's already been given by the community is being taken into account by the developer, and the developer comes forward with trying to address some of the concerns that have been raised, so that when we get to second and third reading, we may understand how that's already influenced the project, the rezoning, and how it may going forward. So I'm supportive of first reading, as it is supportive of the plans that we have in place, and I look forward to hearing from both the developer and the residents at the public hearing so that we can fully understand what's before us.
Okay. Councillor Hansard, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I've got a few things to say about this, and I'm going to stick with what I said before. We see people in our council chambers. Nobody's been particularly unpleasant. In fact, I've seen some smiles coming from some people. Maybe they like some of what we've said previously this evening. So thank you for that. But we don't really know what's in their mind. if a counselor here has received some phone calls, but not all the same people talking to every member of council, we don't know what's in our people's minds. The other thing that I want to point out, I mean, that's one of the reasons we have a public hearing, and for people to turn out here tonight when it's not even a hearing makes an impression, but we don't know what they really are thinking. We can suppose, but we don't really know. When they have an opportunity to speak or not in agreement with someone else who speaks, then we know. So I really would like to know what people are thinking and what the concerns are. I do want to suggest to you that this whole area, some time ago, when Highway 779 was widened and upgraded, this whole area was put in a beautiful bubble for transition. And unless we hear from people who live there in this hearing and other hearings, we don't really know how this impacts people. So we have to hear. And showing up in council chambers isn't the only way we can make a judgment. We don't know what they're going to say. The other thing I want to point out, if you take that block and you go directly north, kitty corner, on the corner of 54th Avenue and 48th Street, there are two very large lots. A little house sitting in the middle of a great big lot. It's a double lot or a lot and a half. And right south of it is a huge vacant lot. That has a huge commercial sign on it right now. It is for sale. If you go directly on the east side of 54th Avenue and 47th Street, there are two lots there that a number of years ago had deplorable houses on it. One of those houses was condemned by Health Canada. I was in that house when a gentleman lived there. It was unbelievable what he was living in. And those two lots have been up for grabs. At one time, there was a proposal for a sixplex, small footprint, sixplex with raised first floor to put one-bedroom suites in there. And those homes were going to face south with the laneway against the apartment building being where parking would take place. No laneway is there. But all of those lots are large lots, many of them 50 feet wide and 125 to 150 feet deep. These are the kinds of lots you put a larger development on. It also does say something to the people who live here, maybe in one of the older homes. You have value in your land. You may have something there that when you reach an age you don't continue to live in your home, it may have better resale value than you think you've got if you try to sell a really older home, no matter how nice you've kept it. So it gives those people perhaps a chance to take advantage of some of these transition dollars that will come to provide growth to our community, and even though they may be a little denser than we're used to, provide a new look on our communities. I'm not saying that's what I want. I'm saying it is an opportunity. And if not this lot, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 lots within a stone's throw of this lot that also are being looked at for redevelopment very much like this. So if you want to bump that north and somebody else has it in their backyard, I guess that's okay too. But we have to realize that we need to let the people speak. That only happens if we pass first reading. We don't say to people, I have my mind made up. Don't confuse me with new information. Because we need that information for us to sit around this council desk and make the best decisions for all of our residents, all of them. So I will be, again, supporting first reading. And then we get to talk to the developer about, what do you think you're going to build here? How could this be altered a little bit, maybe? And unless we have that conversation, everything dies on the mat. I'm not for that. So I'll be supporting it unless the wisdom of council or something else comes forward to change my mind.
Okay, just before I go to the next speaker, Councillor Fletchko, again, there's no motion on the floor. This is asking questions for clear understanding to an administrative staff that presented the thing. So, Councillor Hansard, please. So there is no motion on the floor. This is, again, to ask questions for clear understanding of what the proposal is. Those comments that are made in terms of supporting or not of first reading, that will come when I accept the motion for first reading. Councillor Fletchko.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's exactly where I was headed. This is about first reading. This is not about a debate. We haven't got that far. So I would ask that you move towards that aspect of it, because we're far too far into a debate and assuming too much right at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll post back to asking questions for clear understanding to administration, because that's where we're at. Administration, I believe, thank you for the presentation. And looking at changing, I guess the owner of the land wants to change us from R1 to R7. Looking through our land use bylaw, there's other residential developments, districts that are already available in terms of all R2, R3, R4, R7, R6. Any indication of why in R7 versus any of the other residential developments that we have?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, based on some of the preliminary plans that the applicant has, R7 would be the best fit to accommodate what they are proposing. It would also achieve the density goal, I believe, that they're looking for. And so that's why the R7 is currently being applied for.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding to our administration? Okay. See, go ahead, Councilor Fletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to the administration. So I struggled with the comment that you just made now that fits the developer. When a developer comes to our community and wants to develop within it, do we look at how it fits within our community, or do we just look at what the developer is asking for to fit on a piece of property? And if that's what we're looking for, I think we need to really assess how we look at that. So my question is, when a developer comes to the community wanting to do something out of the ordinary, how do we determine that it's a good fit for our community and a good fit for the residents and our businesses within our community? Who makes that decision?
So through Your Worship to Councillor Fletchko. Well, ultimately, I believe it's the wisdom of council that makes that ultimate decision. The R7 district is chosen in particular because it's specifically crafted for projects of this nature, where they would be infilling in a mature area that's already been developed. So the zone is specifically tailored for these kinds of projects in these mature areas. The reason why we're at first reading today, or why we're supporting requesting that first reading be given by council, it's frankly supported by our policy hierarchy. Within the Old Town Community Plan, this residential character area supports infill development and specifically speaks to redevelopment of sites and a diversity of housing typologies, which would fit the R7 district.
Answer, if I could just follow up with one more question. So as I look through that area and the map that I see above and driving through there, what I see is a number of buildings, larger homes, a number of things that fit within that area. How many of them residential units have multi-family dwellings within those, or nanny suites, or mother-in-law suites, or anything of that act?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Paleschko, we did not do a comprehensive review of any additional suites that may be within the neighborhood. I would say that R1 district allows for a basement suite. So, realistically, any of them could have, and we would be bound to provide development permits legally for anyone that would wish to have a secondary suite. So you could see up to 2 dwellings in any R1 zone parcel. So, R7 obviously would be a difference in density, would be an increase, and it's the first one for the area. So I can understand how that is quite a change. It is, however, supported by our planning hierarchy, and we were supporting the application moving to first reading.
Thank you for your honest answers. I'm looking forward to a bit of a debate here once we get to the questions. So I think it's always important to get as many answers as we can, and we're far from having enough answers. So thank you.
Councillor Loyens?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to what you said about the property and the zoning for the developer, when I look at the map and like I said, I see the properties just south of it. The one property that's an R4 has 907 square meter area. The other one is roughly, we'll say 1,200 square meters. This property in particular that they want to put an R7 on, for rounding up purposes, is only 696 square meters. So curiosity, because I didn't see it and maybe I just missed it in the R7, how would a multi-family home fit in 696 square meter spacing?
Through your worship to Councillor Loyens, the minimum is 400, I believe? 450, sorry, for the minimum size there. So it does fit the minimum size for a lot. And I just wanted to add some additional considerations, because when we do look at these, one thing that's very important from my perspective is to ensure that we do have the policy framework to support it. So one of the things when we get these inquiries is we look at it, we kind of provide some input or some criteria, I guess, to the applicant in terms of what we would be looking for. So for example, with this one here, 55th Avenue is a collector road, so it's not a local road. 54th Avenue, 47th Street, 46th Street, those are local roads. So some of the considerations we have is the road or the adjacent roads sufficient to handle that accommodation for, increased intensification of lots. This one here is a corner lot that also is favorable for this sort of a proposal. So we are very, I guess, aware, and there's nuances within this application that make it very suitable for this type. As mentioned earlier, the R7 is actually catered and was designed intentionally for this sort of thing, to be located for corner lots on collector roads. There's an alleyway here that provides additional access potential. It's right off the highway. So again, it has those access points where it's not going to inundate other adjacent lots. So also just to consider, again, this is a free market sort of thing. It's up to an individual application on each landowner. So just because there's a better lot that might be suited for this, often one of the ways we try to do this is we pre-zone areas, or we've made recommendations to council to pre-zone into complete blocks. And just to kind of note that the area that's on 48th Street, the block kind of between the highway and this lot, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago, the recommendation by administration was to convert that block from an R1 to a C3 to enable that, because we had the policy framework in place with the Old Town Community Plan. So again, those are things that we look at, and then ultimately is up to council to make the decision for the rezoning if it is suitable for the community. But from a policy standpoint, administration has recommended this because we've worked with the applicant to determine that it does suitably fit what is being desired from a policy standpoint, both from a regional plan, say for the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan, as well as our MDP and the Area Redevelopment Plan being the Old Town Community Plan for this area.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for clarity before I move on? Okay, seeing none, I'll move over to Councillor Meyer for the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That we give first reading to bylaw 2674 LUO 23, amend land use bylaw 2671 LUO 23, and authorize administration to proceed with newspaper advertising and notification of a public hearing to be held on June 12th, 2023 for bylaw 2674 LUO 23.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meyer. Members of Council, again, the number on the screen is not 8.3, it's actually 9.3 because we had the addition. Administration didn't have the time to change it, so remember, in terms of our minutes, it's actually 9.3. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Members of Council, I'll open the floor for debate and questions and comments regarding the motion for first reading and to go to public hearing. Councillor Pletchko.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Great conversation around the table today. But I'll take you back to when I first got on council. One of the reasons I got on council was because I didn't like what was going on in the town of Stony Plain, and I speak very loudly about that on a regular basis. But what I learned quickly on council is what's important for our community is not necessarily what's important for Harold. What's important for our community is what's important for the people that represent our community. And we have to take into consideration all that are in our community. So today, we have no idea what the people in our council chambers want to tell us. We have a petition that somebody signed, but we don't know whether they're in support of it or against it. So the good thing with first reading, it does allow our residents to speak loudly. They can come into council, they can tell us what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. It also allows the developer who wants to develop within our community, and we talk about getting better tax rates for our residents. If we don't have the opportunity to actually sit here and listen to what is good for our community, how do we make good choices? We can't make a good choice by not listening to our people. And the only way to hear that is through the first reading. I've come to learn that, being on council, that it's important that people are allowed to speak in favor or against. And then what we as council members have to do is we have to take into consideration everything that's good for our community. And that means the residents and our businesses. So we have to, and our developers. Without them, our community becomes very stagnant. Our tax rates go through the roof, and we no longer can afford to live within our community. So I think it's really important that we as council members take that opportunity to have conversation with the people on the phone that they have called. But some of us have not had some of them conversations, and the only way to get that so we understand it is through discussion. I think that, unless you can tell me why I shouldn't go to first reading, anyone in council, I think it's a disservice to our residents to not have that. It doesn't give them the opportunity other than to come sit in front of us in a council chambers, and we have to assume that they all don't want it. But there may be some here that do. We don't know that. So my basic comment is I would really encourage each one on council, and being new councillor, I was that last term. I learned to listen a lot and then make my best judgment based on what I heard from my residents of the community, my businesses, and what I thought was best around the table for the growth and development of the community. So I'm going to try and encourage each one of you to take that opportunity to at least have the first reading. It does not mean that we're going to approve or disapprove it. It just means we're going to hear each one of you. We get to hear your voice. Today, we don't hear your voices. You're sitting there in chamber looking at us with, pardon the pun, but your mouths are closed and you can't really say nothing. And I'd really like to hear what you're thinking, because I think that would make a decision that's the best interest of each one of us sitting at this table today. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor Pletchko. Any more comments, questions, and debate on the motion? Councilor Hansard, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I had my long say earlier. I echo what Councilor Pletchko just said.
Okay, any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay, seeing none, before I call the vote, members of council, I will support the motion at hand. As I said earlier, I will always support first reading public hearing, because that is the only way that we get actually a true understanding of what's happening in our community, and to be having a fair process for all property owners in our community. I think Councilor Pletchko, you asked the question, well, why R7? Because the owner asked for it, right? And it was mentioned that the wisdom of council will decide if it's warranted or not. So as our administration, even though it may not, this one kind of fits as what I heard, even if it does not fit the proper zoning or kind of the design of the community, if the property owner wants it, and they can petition council and ask to come to first reading and public hearing, and it's up to council to discern that and vote it through or not. So it's not our administration to be gatekeepers. The town of Stony Plain, as council, approves the overall land use bylaw and all the land use plans and the Old Town South redevelopment. Our administration will bring that forward to us, and it's for us to take all those documents and then decide yes or no if it's good. So I appreciate the comments about making sure that there is a fair process for our property owners, regardless if you like the idea or not. And I think we have so many more people in our galleries today is because town council initiated with the developers that we want them to consult with their neighbors first before coming for first and second reading. In the past, when I first got in council in 2007, that was not the case. So developers would come straight first to council for first reading and public hearing. By the time that it rolls to the community, it's almost too late. Now with the ability for the developers to have an open house, talk to the residents, hear some feedback before it comes to first reading, it allows the residents more time to gather the thoughts of whether they like it or they don't like it, or maybe there's questions before it actually goes to that. So members of council, before I call the vote, I will support it, and I ask all members of the council to support it, because that's the truly fair process that we owe all the residents and landowners in town. That also allows us to hear from the applicants as well. When we talk about R1 to R7, which is asked for, but also mentioned by Councilor Loyens, R4, which is, there's a couple units that are south of that. There's also C1 directly east of that. When you had a chance to look at the different zoning, R1 has a 40% density. So in the lot, only 40% can be used. But the height of the building is 12 meters. R7, the lot usage is 50%, so 10% more. But the height is 12 meters. When we talk about R4, the lot usage is 60%, and the height is 12 meters. R5, which is very similar, again, allows 6 units in an R5 lot, but the height is 12 meters. So to be fair to all the residents and to the applicants is, when we look at it, is the height the problem, is the density the problem, and why they chose R7 versus that, we can't ask the applicants that. We can at a public hearing. So members of council, I ask you to support first reading and to go to a public hearing. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, no opposed, that's carried. Okay, that ends our bylaws. We'll move on to business item number 10, which is business items. Looking at the time, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back to our agenda. We'll deal with 10.1. Thank you. Right, members of council, we're back from our recess, and to administration and to all members in the gallery. Moving on with our agenda under number 10, business items 10.1, which is the 2022 Town of Plain audited financial statements. We had the presentation from our auditor. We had a good closed session meeting. Administration, anything else to add to the presentation?
Just good evening, Your Worship and Council again. Just earlier this evening, you heard from our audit partner, Phil Dirks from Metrics Group, and had an opportunity to ask questions. We are now just seeking approval of those financial statements as per MGA Section 281. Subsequent to the approval, the approved financial statements will be submitted to the province by April 30th for the annual submission process, and that will also include the financial information return.
Just email it to us. Okay, thank you very much, members of council. Councillor Anderson, for the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Town Council accept the Town of Stony Plain audited financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2022, as presented this evening.
Okay, members of council, questions, comments, and debate on the motion. Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just comments further to follow up on my comments when the auditor was here in regards to how the TransAlta Tri-Leisure Centre is reported in our financial statements. I think, you know, when you look, we're not treating things necessarily as equally as possible, and you know there is the consolidated version of their statements in note 17, but it's not really clear how that actually impacts the other things in the, like the sales and user charges, fee sheet, for example, and what have you. So it constantly seems to appear that we are incorrectly budgeting, when the reality is, because we have the TLC budget, we probably are correctly budgeting. So I think it would just be prudent for us to report that in such a way that we can actually break that out and see that, to show in the financial statements that it's not a significant miscalculation of budget, it's just how it has to be reported.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Any other comments, questions, and debates on the motion? No? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? And that is carried 7. Thank you. Moving on to 10.2, the provincial election priority strategy. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. As you're very much aware, Albertans will be heading to the polls next month to elect a new provincial government. In an effort to draw attention to the key issues and priorities for Stony Plain, we are encouraging residents to consider how the province can support growth and quality of place for our community when making their voting selection. Our objective is to ensure the town's priorities are understood by provincial government stakeholders and to create a platform to expedite these to the newly elected government of Alberta. We're also providing this update tonight to ensure that these priorities are understood by our residents. We recognize there are a multitude of issues and opportunities the town seeks to address with the provincial government. Through the ongoing advocacy efforts of council and administration, those issues are monitored and actioned. However, at this critical juncture, 2 key opportunities have been determined to have a high value and impact for the future of Stony Plain. These opportunities recommended as priority for provincial support are the investment in a new Stony Plain Recreation Centre and improved access to and services from Westview Health Centre. The new Stony Plain Recreation Centre has been a well-known regional need with thoughtful community engagement and planning. With a funding application already submitted to the federal government, this project would be an ideal opportunity for all orders of government to support community growth, health and wellness, and economic diversity. We invite the province to contribute to this important project. Second, Westview Health Centre is ideally situated to enhance healthcare services at the local level. Investments in Westview will alleviate strain on larger urban hospitals while reducing the impact to regional residents required to travel further for appointments and care. With Westview currently providing care to a regional population of just over 90,000, this facility is an important amenity to far more than just those that live in Stony Plain. With Council's endorsement, these priorities will be communicated formally to provincial stakeholders in advance of the upcoming election, and administration will also monitor their response. Those are my questions, and I'd be pleased to answer, those are my comments, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions from council this evening. Thank you.
Right, so we heard all the questions. Do we have comments to those questions? Okay, see none. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move that Town Council approve the key community priorities for the upcoming 2023 provincial election as presented.
Thank you. And on behalf of our municipality, residents, and the council, thank you much for doing this. I think council's had the opportunities to meet with our advocacy personnel just to talk about things that might affect our community. And I love the fact that this is very succinct, because we know that there's no way that they're going to listen to 5, 10 different asks. We have 2 asks that's just very, very prudent to what we're doing today, and it'll affect our community. So very easzy to ask for 2 things, and it's very easy for the candidates to remember, bring forward to the legislature. Any other questions, comments on the debate? Councillor Hansard, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just out of curiosity, in the hospital priority, is it at a later time that we might bring up with provincial government capacity of the hospital, that's better not to touch on at all while we're trying to get that to be recognized as something worthy of investment by provincial government?
Yeah, so that is the request, is to invest in increasing access and all that within that. That's
Okay, I didn't take that to mean capacity of the hospital, such as addition or...
I think it's just for the overall existing, the current care that we have, and then expanding that. So either it's more of one thing or an expansion of another thing. There's also conversations of that our population has more than doubled since the health center has been built. So I think those are some of the key priorities that we need.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, debate? Call the question, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councilor Meyer, hands up, go ahead.
I was just a comment. Well, first, I would just like to thank administration. As you said, it's very succinct, but I think it's also makes the need very starkly known, you know, in regards to the recreation, it being a very long time, and catching the idea that we've lost the curling rink as well as the Westview Health Center. It's sort of downgrading from some of the services that had been previously offered. You know, it makes the need seem, well, not just seem, but, you know, it highlights the need. But I also just wanted to just draw to this pamphlet that we had handed out here. I'm just curious, the point of this this bullet at the, or this highlighted bit here, population growth since 2010. Oh, okay, it's just cut off.
Just didn't print.
Okay, just didn't print. All right, never mind, Your Worship. I see it's in this one. It just doesn't highlight up on this one here.
Oh, okay.
Mine didn't print. Okay, I was going to say, what is the point of this? But okay, it makes more sense. I just have a misprint. Okay.
Okay. So apologies, Councillor Meyer, our staff, for being very diligent, and you were at the last of the ink cartridge, and it just didn't get printed out on yours. So we'll make sure you get the first printing next time. Any other questions, comments, debate? Call the question, all in favor? And that's carried 7. Thank you. All right, moving on to 10.3, the strategic and corporate plan update for Q1.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Again, we provide a quarterly update on progress and status of the work to advance both our strategic plan as well as our key corporate plan initiatives and highlight those for council. And so this is the Q1 summary, capturing the recently approved and updated strategic plan that council provided at the end of May, as well as some key corporate plan initiatives that were approved by council in November in our Q4 of 2023 as well. I won't go into the details of the report. It's there within the agenda package for review and consideration, and would just ask if invite any questions of council for clarification or understanding. Happy to answer those at this point in time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions for clear understanding on that presentation? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question on page 162 of 167. This is the Community Recreation Center update. Earlier in Q1, we had a presentation, as noted here, with some new figures in terms of the updated cost. And so just looking at this particular item, we see the original approved amount of $15 million, where council's received kind of an update to that one, where the cost is going to be increased. So just curious why we would use the old numbers when we have new numbers available to us.
Certainly, Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson and all of council. So the report captures what has been approved by council with the $15 million that was identified within the corporate plan. The updated information which was provided to council in Q1 is going to be brought back and refined for a final decision point. And once council makes that decision to move forward based on that new information, that new number, we will refine and update this reporting structure as well. I'll just look to our General Manager of Community and Protective Services if he wants to add any other comments, and he does.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson, the 15 million represents the number that we've carried through the corporate planning process, and once we have an indication about grants and other funding opportunities, then we'd be back to council, and that 15 million may still be 15 million, or it might be a different number. But that was the town's commitment towards that particular facility at the time of which it was included in the corporate plan.
Okay, thank you, and I do appreciate that. Can I ask a follow-up question? Thank you. I guess my concern a little bit is, or my concern, not a little bit, my concern is this is a public-facing document, and so, when residents see this, they're going to see the 15 million. I know this is only one way that we communicate to our residents what's going on in our community, and so I jumped back to the Town of Stony Plain website just to see if that new information was reflected on the Community Recreation Center facility, Community Recreation Facility page. And there's a couple of council presentations here, but certainly was unable to find the new information that was shared with council in Q1, including the updated cost of that. Under council presentations, we have February 14, 2022 and July 11th, 2022. And so I'm wondering if we can have that new information at least added to the website so that it's public facing as we move forward to make a decision.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson, we'll certainly make sure still on that page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just looking at that same page, and I think Councillor Anderson makes a really good point there. I think completion is Q4 2024, which is still on track. I think we should have a little incident of Q1 there where the updated status is that the council approved this. So it's just right there so that we can track the progress going forward. Because we did do something on this file. It's just nothing hasn't happened since until then. Okay. Councillor Laurie.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and actually to add to that, there is an update on that. It's just on a different page under a different item. So it's on page 158 under the key action, build a recreation facility in Stony Plain supports the recommendation of the 2017 indoor rec study. It does say project progress report presented to council in Q1 2023. So maybe some alignment in where they're reported. I know, again, this is kind of aligning with strategic plan and so on. So just some consistency there. I did want to ask a bit of an update question because this is pushing onto a year since the last update. In regards to the key action of work with CN Rail to ensure the existing rail lines are safe for all residents. So this is the top of page 159. So we had the preliminary design work that had proceeded, and then there's a funding application to Transport Canada in Q2 of 2022, and then there's really been nothing since that time. I'm just wondering, you know, what's the next steps on this? Where are we in this? When are we expecting an update on this? And where are we at?
Through your worship to you, Councillor Lori, thank you for the question. We did reach out to the federal government on the status on that and where it was at. We don't have a firm timeline to a full answer. The indications we've gotten is we were hoping to have an answer by February this year, as I've communicated, but the recent update has been sometime in June, going into in a couple of months. So we are actively pursuing any updates where we can, but that was the latest information I've received from staff.
Okay, and just for clarity, the update or answer in June is in regards to the funding application as to whether we would or would not be receiving funding from the federal government?
Through your worship to Councillor Lori, that's correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 156, at the very top, under key actions, and then bump over to update, the very first item says winter front curb collection, resident feedback in Q1 of 2023. I know other councilors received phone calls and questions and concerns about the front curb pickup for garbage in the winter, which for some of them who live mid-block meant they either had to walk quite a distance around to get their garbage cans out front, or in some cases, people don't have driveways at all, live on a bit of a hill and an incline, and they were concerned about no way to get their garbage cans down to the front curb. That was over in Meridian Heights. 3 residents called me there. So have we finished gathering our resident feedback on that trial project for front curb pickup of garbage all winter long? Or is that somewhere where people can go and fill out a survey and answer questions about it? What raised my concern was key action says, conduct meaningful and relevant engagement with the public to support our future, vision, strategies, delivery of services, and then that is the very first thing. Some people will read that we've already made up our mind, and I just don't know if they've had an opportunity to give their feedback, except to us one-off on council who may have gotten their phone calls and possibly admin. So can you let us know, please, how people are able to comment about that whole experiment?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Hansard, thank you for the question. So there was a survey sent out to residents in Q1 of this year, and there was staff reached out to residents through writing through the website and indicated that they could deliver their any feedback they had on the service through via phone call or through the outlined processes in the engagement letter or through the website. I don't have an update on where that's at right now, but that was something that our public works teams were working very diligently on, trying to collect as much feedback from residents. As you have pointed out, there were a number of questions brought to council, so it was something that we were taking very meaningfully, trying to make sure that we gave as much access to that survey and that information as much as is possible for those that wanted to participate.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, would it be out of line to ask for that survey to be made front and center somewhere or reposted on social media so that we can share it around?
Your Worship, maybe just a couple of comments there. So I think just one thing in reference to part of the question from Councillor Hansard. So for clarity, no decisions have been made in any final state on that particular service change or pilot project or what have you. As for the survey itself or the information, if anything was going to change, then that would be provided to council in some form of a specific update and survey results would be there and so on and so forth. But I think, as the general manager said, still sort of accumulating that or getting it together. Haven't taken a dive into what that could look like moving forward. So, Your Worship, I'll just be clear. No decision's been made. I know that was there was some contention amongst the public in that area, or a couple different areas on that one. So just be clear. No decision made on final service level there. Any significant or major change would be in the council chambers in its entirety at some point in the future. And I'll stop there, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments regarding the Q1 update? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just turning to page 156, the economic opportunity, second square there. Now, I know we did a community ambassador program, and I see here a tourism ambassador program. So the first question is, are those one and the same, or are those different programs? And then just looking that the tourism ambassador program was launched in Q1, I'm curious if council will be receiving an update on those efforts.
Worship, through to Councillor Meyer. So the Tourism Ambassador Program is continuing at this point in time. Updates on that program will be provided through our quarterly report documents, our operational report documents. That's where we've provided them in the past, and we'll continue to provide the details of the uptake and some of the outcomes of that program. So that program does continue. I'm just going to ask our General Manager of Community and Social Development. I believe there was some engagement at the community level with that program and through their department as well.
Thank you. Your Worship, through you to Councillor Meyer and the rest of Council. So we do have a Neighbourhood Connect program, which has been ongoing for several years now. There will be a spring relaunch or revitalization, which happens every year during spring, taking place mid-May. And so that's the event that we celebrate in September, the third week in September, around Neighbours Day. And that program is largely, works with neighbours, community partners in order to share different activities that are taking place in our community, and also to organize local events within their own neighbourhoods and smaller communities.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
One last item under 9.3, Mr. Mayor, from me. That's the very last page, I believe, under Community Recreation Center. I'm just wondering if our dollar amount there, the budget of $15 million, is an accurate number to be reflected in our report here, because it's my understanding that we have agreed as council that the curling club rebuild and expansion could be covered in phase 1. Did that not add significant dollars to that dollar? I realize they're coming to the table with a sizable amount of money, but the 15 million is not really 15 million. Should that be a different number?
Deputy Mayor, I think similar questions to what Councillor Anderson asked. Can the administration provide the answer again?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Hansard. So the 15 million that's reported within this document, this quarterly report, is based on what was approved by Council in the corporate plan in November. We appreciate that Council has been provided, and the community has been provided an update, and we've referenced that the details and some of the budgeting has been presented in Q1. That number would not necessarily adjust until Council has given us approval and direction to finalize that to move forward. So we will track that through as we make decisions going forward with regards to the recreation center, but appreciate that there are some nuances in how what has transacted since the corporate plan has approved with regards to the community center.
Excellent.
Community recreation center.
Okay. Any other more questions, comments? Okay. On page 160. Says under environmental responsibility, this says update waste service update presented to council in Q1 of 2023. I know I've missed a couple meetings for holidays and et cetera. I don't recall reading a presentation on the waste services upstate. Did I miss that one?
It was in February.
Your worship, we had, thank you for the question. There was a meeting, I believe it was in February. We brought the manager of infrastructure assets to provide an update on the waste services.
Okay, so, and that's when we talked about different sizes and everything else. So is there a follow-up to that? Because we talked about when the contract was going to be expiring, and how do we use that to leverage some of the conversation that council had around the table regarding different service option or service provider or service level.
Your worship, just unpacking that. So is the question around the waste service contract itself, or about the update on the waste carts, or when will there be more information brought forward?
Right, so when administration provided that, there was a whole bunch of options, et cetera. And I also know there's also a contract coming up for renewal. So the problem is that I will make sure that we don't renew a contract for an extra year or two without having that conversation amongst council, deciding what our new service level could be. So if this is coming into Q1 that we received, then when we go to whenever the contract is there enough time for council to have that conversation about what kind of service levels or differences that we provide that we offer today, whether we didn't offer yesterday or would offer in the future?
Your worship, thank you for the clarification. So the information that was contained in that update were, specifically around the race carts, were things that we were exploring as part of future levels of service within the waste carts. So there are no decisions on that at this time. It was more to give council an update as to things we've been hearing and trying to integrate into future considerations, future contracts as we get them in. So that includes different cart sizes as outlined by the manager of infrastructure assets at the time.
Okay, I appreciate that then. So then my question follow-up is, when does our service contract expire with the current provider?
I don't have the exact date, your worship, on me, but I believe it's the end of this year.
Okay, so more enough time for council to have that conversation about service levels and service options that we want to provide for our residents.
Your worship, that's correct.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? See none. Councillor Loynes for the motion, please.
The Town Council accept the Strategic and Corporate Plan Q1 2023 report for information.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on the motion to accept for information? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried 7. Thank you. Moving on to 10.4, the Stony Plain Library Board appointment. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you. Through your worship, to members of council, the report before you is advising that after the yearly citizen at large board appointments in October, 2 vacancies became available on the Stony Plain Public Library Board. One of the vacancies was filled in February of 2023, and the other vacancy was advertised on the town website, and one application was received. The board interviewed the applicant and would like to move forward with recommending appointment of that applicant to the board.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Meyer?
Just to fill in some of the blanks there. The board selection committee interviewed this individual and is recommending their appointment to the board. I think that'll bring us to a full contingent at the library board again, so that'll be nice. Spread the work around.
Okay. Thank you. I'll ask you to make the motion as well.
Oh. The town council appoint Claire Callback to the Stony Plain Public Library Board.
Thank you. Members of council, any debate on that motion? Okay, call the question, all in favor? That is carried 7. Thank you. Move on to council discussion. We'll start with Councilor Plechko.
This evening, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
I'm good this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Loynes.
I just wanted to make note that on the 26th, it is National Administration Day. We have a lovely team of admins that make sure we get everything we need, and I just wanted to express my gratitude to all of them. That is it.
Thank you. Councilor Lorry.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to commend our emergency services for the work done in the fire that occurred last weekend in the oh my goodness, Somerville. Thank you. Woodlands, Somerville. Take your pick of the area there. Kind of affected multiple residents. So obviously a quick response to that. I did want to ask the general manager as well. I see that Parkland County now surrounding us has put in place a full fire ban. I know it's not as common to see those within the municipalities, but given the event that we've had and the conditions haven't really seemed to have changed, is that something that we are considering, that we would consider, or is it something that, again, as an urban, doesn't really happen too much here?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, certainly we do look at those factors when it comes to burning in larger fields. So sometimes we do get farmers within our jurisdiction will certainly come and ask if they can do some open burning, and we'll restrict those permits if need so. So backyard permits, backyard fires certainly are permitted. The risk is quite low, but we do typically put out some information if we are in one of those states where we would limit the burning, and that's on a case by case, and we get very little burn permits that we would issue on a yearly basis.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll just follow that up by saying, it is a time of year where a lot of people are starting to do their spring cleanup and their yard work. I don't know if it's in the communications plan, but I know we do have some great materials about the backyard fire pits and the spark arresters that should be on top of them and those type of things. So if it's not, maybe just if we could have our communications just reiterate that information out there, would be good this time of year to make sure anybody burning any yard debris, sticks and branches and twigs and things like that, that they've got what they need to appropriately prevent any other issues from occurring. So that's all for me this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question, just to follow up from last week to the GM of Community Protective Services. Or through you, sorry, Mr. Mayor, to administration. You had mentioned a meeting with the architect of the proposed community rec center related to accessibility. That was going to happen last week, I believe Thursday. Just wondering if you have any updates to us specific to accessibility considerations that they have taken into advisement as they finalize the plans there.
Certainly, Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson, we did explore I was meeting with him, we did explore some additional opportunities for, there's some expensive opportunities for review. In talking with him and his staff, they certainly go above the standard that is recognized in the Act and the Code, because there is a universal accessibility design standard that they try to exceed in this particular circumstance. So we do have the local gentleman that we're looking to look at the drawings and do some review of that. Also, tricky part for some people is the building doesn't exist, so coming through and do the review. The other component too is when you do an accessibility review, it's not just wheelchairs and strollers and those types of things getting in and around the building. Often it comes to the auditory and the visual also, in terms of some people will, an arrow made of a different type of material is more, increases their opportunity to get to a washroom versus just a washroom sign. So several different layers of accessibility for sure. So we certainly have incorporated some of those with the designs. We continue to get some interior cut sheets from what things look like. A little bit of a challenge with not having the building and someone going through and actually looking through it. So they do have to have that skill set of actually looking into physical detailed drawings and understanding. So the quick answer is yes, a lot of work is happening related to that. There's a bit of challenge with respect to we don't have a physical building, so some can't look at the drawings and do that. There is an expensive opportunity for us to go through some review through the Rick Hansen Foundation. And so we're debating whether or not the money spent is required at this point based on the work that we've completed in the detailed designs.
No, and I certainly appreciate the commentary there and the consideration, beyond mobility. And I think that's important in terms of making a facility that is accessible to as many people as possible. So sounds like the conversation is well underway. I appreciate the reference to, a local gentleman that may have some eyes there. I think, the important piece, I know the reference of not having a building yet, but so there are certain measures that can be taken beforehand, to ensure we've taken a universal design approach to make sure as many as possible can make good use of the facility. So I appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Meyer?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly, an update on the library's pursuit of a new director. The board has completed interviews at this time, and hopefully I will have something more to announce next week. But I do have just a question as well. So in the last week, with the weather being nicer, I've seen more individuals out and about, but I've also seen a number of, I'll just describe them. One is like a motor-powered motorbike that somebody was, I'd call it a motorbike, although I don't think it, more probably a scooter, driving on the sidewalks downtown. And then I've also noticed a number of individuals with larger powered electric scooters also on the sidewalks. And I'm also have noted a number of, I guess you'd call them go-karts. One with a license plate, just buoying around the streets. And anyhow, so I'm just curious if administration has any commentary on what is permissible to be ridden on sidewalks versus what must be driven on the roadways.
Your Worship, a quick answer this evening and likely a follow-up through email. Our community standards bylaw and our traffic bylaw do state specifically the types of vehicles that can be on our sidewalks. The motorized wheelchairs, or sorry, scooters, certainly do fall within that category, and there's a very defined definition with respect to those. They are getting fancier. Probably when we wrote the bylaw, they weren't as fancy as they currently are. They're small cars at this point, but the speed and the CC and the operation of the vehicle is certainly something that fits within the definition. Definitely CC, so how fast the vehicle can go and what they're driven by is a factor in our definition. Our enforcement services team is quite aware of the different types of modes of transportation that exist today. And we are looking at the traffic bylaw, and community standards are certainly under review and coming to council later this year. But we certainly are looking at the impact of electric vehicles on our infrastructure within the town of Stony Plain. So there likely will be some reference to electric vehicles in our bylaws moving forward in order for us to continue to manage that increasing trend.
Okay, thank you for that response.
Anything else? So that, again, I'll just echo the comments made by Councilor about our emergency services that dealt with the field fire that just happened a week and a half ago. Again, thank you to our residents that took the opportunity to assist our fire departments and also to water down their houses in the grass. And to the mutual aid. I think a lot of people don't realize that we do have a mutual aid agreement with Spruce Grove and Parkland County, that if there is a need, we can access that and call on the help of mutual aid, and this is one of the scenarios that we did. So that's what we have in terms of mutual cooperation to make sure that our residents are safe. Other things, I'd like to thank administration for the street clearing that's happening. A lot of residents downtown and let me know that usually every morning they're seeing the street clearing come by again and again, because I think we use so much sand and salt that it takes more than one pass to clear everything up, and sometimes it takes a week to do one street, because by the time you go over it, pick up some dirt and some sand, you're full, and by the time you get back to the shop to drop it off, there's cars parked everywhere again. So again, you have to come back the next morning to do it again, and that's the reason why it takes a little longer than some people may expect. If nobody parked anywhere, then we wouldn't have a problem. We can just go back and forth 5 times and have it all done. But the residents are appreciative of the work that the Public Works is doing. So thank you if you pass that along. And again, in terms of volunteers, thank you. Councillor Loyens just passed me a note to thank all our community groups and residents that participated, and also our staff in Pitchin Week. Every year that happens in the middle of April as the spring comes out, the snow is melted. There's a lot of debris that's been covered up by the snow, and it's good to see that the residents and community groups pull together to make sure that our community is looking a little bit better. Second, I'd like to just have a great announcement. It came out in Stony Plain News that there is a disc golf course coming to the town of Stony Plain for the opening of fall of 2023. So those that disc golf, well, they can actually then now apply and play disc golf. Because if can't play real golf, you can play disc golf. I don't know if that's, don't quote me. No, I understand that disc golf is a huge and growing sport within our tri-regions. So I'm really glad to see that there was partnerships that made this happen, especially some of the donations from the contractors that helped clear the land around Rotary Park. So definitely, and then having that possibility by this fall. Last, before I sign off, I'd like to wish Councillor Hansard happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. It's a milestone birthday, and I'll never tell.
And you're 50. And you are 50.
150.
No, we'll just go with 50. But yes, on behalf of council, thank you very much for all your work and service and dedication to the town of Stony Plain, and wish you a happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. So age isn't a problem for many of us. I still work 2 jobs. So, thank you.
That's right. With that, administration, thank you for providing the package. We're adjourned.